We're back with the second video. In my Queen of Shadows series, we are picking up in chapter 20 and we're going to finish out part 1 of this book. And we pick up, of course, with our witches. Elide has been instructed to give a letter to the wing leader, Manon, and she knows that Manon is up in the Eyrie, which is up like a bunch of stairs, and she's having like a rough time because if we recall, Elide has like mangled ankle. She had to limp up all of these stairs. And she's thinking about how she is like supposed to be the Lady of Moranth. Like she's supposed to be like a lady in Terrasen. And but she's not because everyone in Terrasen is like pretty much dead. But she is planning an escape. She's planning on using the delivery caravans that come and deliver like food to the kitchens to get out of here. She's gonna hop on one, piece the heck out of here. She's up in the Eyrie and she finds Manon, who's being scary. Which is like not surprising, that's kind of Manon's MO. And she hands over the letter, and Elide is faking a stammer. And she does this all the time because she finds it is helpful to get her out of conversations faster because people are uncomfortable with it. And Manon is like, I'm surprised the seal isn't broken though. If you were a good spy, you would know how to do it without breaking the wax. And Elide says, if I were a good spy, I could also read. Shout out to SarahJMaas for really spotlighting these illiterate teenage girlies. She loves an illiterate teenage girl, and you know, we love her too. Manon's like, okay, well, do you see these letters? That's my name. My name is Manon, and if you see them anywhere, like on any document, any piece of paper, you bring that straight to me, okay? Boop. Also, please stop faking a stammer. It's weird behavior. I did also smell your fingers, your little phalanges, all over my maps in my room. Are you planning on escaping? And Elide's like, no, would literally never, like, absolutely not. And Manon's like, I don't know what game you're playing. If you're a spy, if you're a thief, if you're just looking out for yourself, but do not pretend that you are some meek, pathetic little girl when I can see that vicious mind working behind your eyes. We love. Manon is like, I know you are more than you let on, Elide. You are smarty pants. Manon turns to her and is like, is Vernon, your uncle, related to your dad or your mom? And Elide's like, my dad, my mom was like a nobody from this town in northern Terrasen called Rommesel. And Manon's like, I know it, leave. And Abraxos roars and Elide flinches and Manon's like, don't even worry about it. Then Manon says, it's just Abraxos, she said, with a hint of a smile forming on her cruel mouth, a bit of light gleaming in those golden eyes. Her mount must make her happy then, if witches could be happy. He's hungry. Abraxos waddles on out and Manon's like, you swine. Do you need the whole mountain to know you're hungry? And he's like, yes. He comes over and Elide's like, his teeth are so pointy and they are so close to Manon's head. And she seems like completely indifferent. Elide is frozen. And then Abraxos looks down at the chain around her ankle and there's like recognition there. We know Abraxos is a smarty pants. And so he sees that chain and he like recognizes it and like has some sort of like kinship with it. And Elide realizes pretty immediately that Abraxos is like a lot smaller than all the other wyverns. And she thinks to herself, if Manon had a soft spot for broken things, perhaps she would spare her as well. Love. She's like, me and Abraxos are kind of similar vibes, like small, a little bit mangled. Anyway, Abraxos lays down and stretches out on the ground like a little puppy dog. And Manon's like, enough, you're being so dramatic. And Elide asks, how do they exist about the wyverns? And Manon's like, the king made them, like, I don't know. And Elide thinks about the vibes of the mountain, but isn't he evil? Like, if the king made them, why isn't he evil like the rest of the mountain? And Manon's like, no, however he was made, Abraxos, something went wrong with that part, with the turning him evil part, because like Abraxos is certainly not evil. And then she sends Elide away. She's leaving. Manon's reading the letter she was given. But before she reads the letter, she turns to Abraxos and she says, you soft-hearted worm, Manon hissed at Abraxos, once the cunning, many-faced girl was gone. The girl might be hiding secrets, but her lineage wasn't one of them. She had no idea that witch blood flowed strong in her mortal veins, a crippled leg in chains, and you're in love. Anyway, the letter, which we love. Abraxos loves Elide. He's like, this is a good one. We're gonna keep her around. We love her. Manon opens the letter. Also, we just found out Elide has witch blood. Which will become important. Like, she's not like a witch. Like, she doesn't have enough witch blood to like make her like equivalent to Manon in terms of like power. I mean, we don't know how much magic she has, but she's like not full-blooded witch, but like somewhere in her lineage, like her great-grandmother or something was a witch, which is fun. Anyway, Manon opens the letter. It's from her grandmother, and it says, do not disobey the Duke's orders. Do not question him. If there is another letter from Moranth about your disobedience, I will fly down there myself and hang you by your intestines. With your 13 and that runt of a beast beside you. 3 yellow legs and 2 blue blood covens are arriving tomorrow. See to it that there are no fights or trouble. I do not need any other matrons breathing down my neck about their vermin. And then Manon thinks back to what that Croatian witch said in the last book of it, before she killed her. She said that like the big secret the Croatian witches were keeping is that the Iron Teeth witches are made into monsters. They are not born monsters, they are made into monsters. And she's just like still chewing on that. And after that, Manon goes down into Jeselane's room. Jeselane's one of the 13, and she is like the smart one. She's the smart one of the group. She had gone to mortal school in Terracin when she was young, which was like centuries and centuries ago. And Manon goes to her and says, "Tell me about the Valg." And this is what she says. "Millennia ago, when the Valg broke into our world, witches did not exist. It was the Valg and the Fae and humans. But the Valg were demons, I suppose. They wanted our world for their own, and they thought a good way to get it would be to ensure that their offspring could survive here. The humans weren't compatible, too breakable. But the Fae, the Valg kidnapped and stole whatever Fae they could. And because your eyes are getting that glazed look, I'm just going to jump to the end and say, the offspring became us, witches. The Iron Teeth took after our Valg ancestors more, while the Crocians got more of the Fae traits. The people of these lands didn't want us here, not after the war, but the Fae King Brandon didn't think it was right to hunt us all down, so he gave us the Western Wastes. And there we went, until the Witch War made us exiles again." Manon picked at her nails. "And the Valg are wicked?" "We are wicked," Jeselaine said. "The Valg, legend has it that they're the origin of evil. They are blackness and despair incarnate. Sounds like our kind of people, and maybe good ones indeed to ally with, to breed with." But Jeselaine's smile faded. "No," she said softly. "No, I do not think they would be our kind of people at all. They have no laws, no codes. They would see the 13 as weak for our bonds and rules, as something to break for their amusement." Manon stiffened slightly. "And if the Valg were ever to return here, Brandon and the Fae Queen Maeve found ways to defeat them, to send them back. I would hope that someone would find a way to do so again. More to think about." She turned, but Jeselaine said, "That's the smell, isn't it? The smell here. Around some of the soldiers. Like it's wrong, from another world. The king found some way to bring them here and stuff them into human bodies." And Manon is like, "Yeah, the Duke said that the Valg were the king's allies." And Jeselaine is like, "They will only be allies to them if it benefits them. Like, as soon as they don't need the king's men anymore, they're going to turn against him." And Manon explains that the Duke wants her to pick a Blackbeak coven to give them to like essentially experiment on, to insert stones into their bellies and like breed Iron Teeth Valg babies. And Jeselaine just asked her, "Are you going to do that?" And Manon said, "Grandmother said I was supposed to listen to every order from the Duke." And Jeselaine says, "Who will you pick?" And Manon's like, "I don't know, but I need to decide soon. Like, the Duke has demanded that I give him someone very soon." She looks back and she sees Jeselaine, who Manon had seen glut herself on the blood of men, had paled by the time Manon shut the door. So, like, Jeselaine also doesn't think this is, like, a super great idea. At breakfast the next morning, word has clearly gotten out that Manon's task about what Duke Parrington has asked of her. Everyone always goes to breakfast. All the 13 and Manon, she, like, makes them go to breakfast, even though they don't eat the food there. It's just, like, they have to make an appearance. They have to, like, because Manon's the wing leader, they're, like, you know, top dogs here. And so it's important that they like make an appearance and kind of show as a show of strength. And so they're at breakfast and one of the Yellow Legs girlies comes up and volunteers for the position. She's like, "My coven, my girlies would be happy to, like, would be honored to be the coven you choose for Duke Parrington." Apparently the Yellow Legs are typically like the grunt workers in the Iron Teeth world. Like the Blackbeaks are kind of like the girls that go out there and fight, and so are the Blue Bloods. Yellow Legs are often left behind, and they see this as a way that they could potentially get some like glory for their coven. And so they're like, "We volunteer." And so Manon goes to tell the Duke that she's gonna use that Yellow Legs coven that volunteered because it absolves her of some guilt. She kind of does not think this is a great idea, but she also wants to listen to her grandmother. She wants to do what she's supposed to be doing, and she's like, "Well, these people already volunteered, so like, shouldn't I let them?" He's like a little bit annoyed because he asked for Blackbeaks, but in the end he like allows it. He's like, "Okay, fine." And then Manon asks him, "To what end? Why do all this? Why ally with the Valg? Why raise this army? Why?" She could not understand it. The continent already belonged to them. It made no sense. "Because we can," the Duke said simply, "and because this world has too long dwelled in ignorance and archaic tradition, it is time to see what might be improved." But she had not missed the words, "this world." Not this land, not this continent, this world. She wondered whether her grandmother had considered the idea that they might one day have to fight to keep the wastes, fight the very men who had helped them take back their home, and wondered what would become of those Valg Iron Teeth witchlings in that world. So Manon's like, this is a little suspicious. Like, even you are not giving me the answers I was hoping for. Back to Dorian. We have to do a Dorian check-in chapter where we find out if Dorian is still having a bad time. Dorian, we get, like, essentially the fight from earlier, from a few chapters ago, from Dorian's perspective. Apparently when he saw Aelin, he tried to, like, speak. He tried to, like, take back control of his body from the Valg Prince, but he wasn't able to. There's, like, hope in that moment. He's glad that she had caught him, and in that moment, like, wished that she had killed him. And he hated her to some extent for not killing him. But even after all that, he's taken back to the king's chambers, and Dorian is tortured because they're trying to torture the name of the person who stole Aedion out of Dorian, and he refuses to give her name even when the king, like, really tries to pull it out of him. Even though Dorian is taken over by a Valg prince and he, like, can't seem to break free, he's still protecting Aelin because he's still in there somewhere. Back with Chaol. Chaol has left Aelin's house. Remember, last we saw them, they were in a little tiff, and he's in a bad mood. He's so mad that Aelin tried to kill Dorian, and even more mad that she told him that, like, there is no hope for Dorian. Like, that's the thing that's really, like, grinding his gears. He's like, well, like, there is hope. There has to be hope for Dorian. We cannot give up. He decides, you know what would make me feel better? If I went and killed some Valg in the sewers where they normally hang out. And he gets down there and there's no Valg there anymore. They usually keep their prisoners in this, like, one spot in the sewers, and it's, like, completely empty, and it's clearly a reaction to the rebel action at Dorian's birthday the day before, that they've removed all of the prisoners from the sewers and have moved them elsewhere. And so then he's in a bad mood, and so he decides to go to Nesryn's family's bakery. He's checking in with Nesryn. Nesryn is back there kind of just checking in with her family, making sure that everyone is fine, that, like, no suspicions landed on them. Apparently some guards stopped by, but they, like, gave him some baked goods and sent him on their way. And Nesryn turns to Chaol and she's like, it's sort of your fault that Aelin doesn't trust you. You're the one who went to Arobynn. Like, if you want to, like, build a relationship, rebuild the trust between you and Aelin, like, you can't be going to Arobynn. Because Nesryn has a brain in her, unlike Chaol. And Chaol says, I'm so glad I did. Otherwise, if I wouldn't have gone to Arobynn, she would have killed Dorian. And Nesryn's like, would that really have been so bad? Like, I saw him. It really seems like he might be gone. Like, what if he is gone? What are we going to do then? And Chaol's like, she can't be right. She's not right. Dorian is still in there. And Nesryn pursed her lips, even as her eyes softened. Why? And Chaol says, because it is all for nothing. Everything that's happened, it's all for nothing. You wouldn't understand. And Nesryn's like, I would understand. He is, like, the future of the kingdom. I understand that it is a major blow. But, like, you can't just sit around being sorry for yourself. You know, like, we have to just, like, keep moving. We need to, like, I'm not telling you to stop fighting for Dorian. I'm not telling you to do that. But I'm also saying that you need to start thinking about what is going to be your backup plan. If Dorian really is gone, how are we going to adapt? How are we going to move forward? What are we going to do next? And Chaol's like, I'm not going to abandon him. Like, I can't have a plan B. And Nesryn's like, okay. Okay. She's trying to reason with Chaol, and he cannot be reasoned with. Back at the house, Aedion is waking up for the first time, and he sees Aelin, who is asleep on a chair next to his bed. And she wakes up as soon as she hears Aedion stirring, and she says, I'm ready to accept my thanks for your spectacular rescue at any time, you know. And he immediately starts crying. And he says to her, remind me to never get on your bad side. A smile tugged at her lips, and her eyes, their eyes, sparkled. Hello, Aedion. Hearing his name on her tongue snapped something loose, and he had to close his eyes, his body barking in pain as it shook with the force of tears trying to get out of him. When he had mastered himself, he said hoarsely, thank you for your spectacular rescue. Let's never do it again. And Aelin kind of, like, recounts what they know now. So the king is very upset about what happened, obviously. He, like, not only lost Aedion, his little hostage, but also he did not capture Aelin. So, like, he's in a bad mood. And Aedion turns to her and he says, it was worth it. He said, his smile fading. You were worth it. All these years, all the waiting, you were worth it. He had known the moment she had looked up at him as she stood before his execution block, defiant and wicked and wild. And Aelin says, I think that's the healing tonic talking, she said, but her throat bobbed as she wiped at her eyes. He like gestures for her to come sit with him on the bed. And he said, and he thinks her scent hit him for a second. He could only breathe it in deep in his lungs, his fey instincts roaring that this was his family. This was his queen. This was Aelin. He would have known her even if he were blind. Even if there were another scent intertwined with hers. Staggeringly powerful and ancient and male. Interesting. And they just, like, sit there and they spend a long time, like, telling each other, like, both of their stories. The stories of where they have been for the past, like, a decade. And when they were both finished telling their stories, when their souls were drained and grieving but gilded with growing joy, she nestled down across from Aedion, her cousin, her friend. They'd been forged of the same ore, two sides of the same golden, scarred coin. She'd known it when she spied him atop the execution platform. She couldn't explain it. No one could understand that instant bond, that soul-deep assurance and rightness, unless they too had experienced it. But she owed no explanations to anyone, not about Aedion. And after they have, like, kind of finished telling their stories, they're just, like, laying there on the bed next to each other. And Aelin turns to Aedion. She says, "Are you ashamed of what I've done?" And he goes, Why would you think that?" And she couldn't quite look him in the eyes as she ran her finger down the blanket. "Are you? When he turned to her, his handsome face was open, soft, in a way she doubted Minnie ever saw. Never, he said. I could never be ashamed of you. She doubted that, and when she twisted away, he gently grabbed her chin, forcing her eyes to him. You survived. I survived. We're together again. I once begged the gods to let me see you, if only for a moment. To see you and know that you'd made it. Just once. That was all I had ever hoped for. And she couldn't stop the tears that began slipping down her face. Whatever you had to do to survive, whatever you did from spite or rage or selfishness, I don't give a damn. You're here and you're perfect. You always were and you always will be. That scene did make me cry when I read that. I didn't cry this time because I'm strong and brave and tough. But it did make me cry in the book as I was rereading it for this video. Okay, then night out on the town. Aelin has been summoned to the vaults by Arobynn, and she brings Chaol and Nesryn with her. She is like, there'll be King's guards and Valg guys here, so like come with me and then you can like follow them to their new secret hideout. But also like she needs a little bit of backup, she feels, as she's going into the vaults and she's gonna deal with Arobynn. So it's like nice and comforting to have some people with her. Oh, they're not going to the vaults, they're going to the pits, because remember she burned the vaults down. Sorry. There's this new place called the pits, like that like immediately sprung up and replaced the vaults. She gets there and Arobynn has brought Lysandra, and Aelin has to pretend that they're not besties, which is super hard for her because now they are besties. And so they have to like give each other like stink eyes. Essentially Arobynn assures her that, and Arobynn is like kind of like recapping the events with her, and he assures her that all the dancers made it onto the boats and that they are safe. And then he turns to her and he says, we're down a fighter for tonight. I told them you trained in the Red Desert with the Silent Assassins. Give them whatever name you'd like, but like you gotta go fight tonight. XOXO. And Aelin is like, joy, but she like rolls off of it. Again, when she's with Arobynn, she's wearing Celaena Sardothien. She's put on her assassin swagger. Okay, and so she's like, great, I'm gonna deal with that. And then she looks back at Lysandra standing next to Arobynn, and she thinks to herself, she wondered what it was like to have to endure the man who had slaughtered your lover. But Lysandra's face was a mask of worry, weariness, and mindlessness. Another skin she wore as she idly cooled herself with a gorgeous fan of lace and ivory, so out of place in the cesspool. And then Lysandra is able to get away from Arobynn for just a second, and Aelin like kind of updates her about how Aedion's doing. She's like, he's doing much better, and Aelin thanks her for her participation in like the events of the night before. So Arobynn has essentially arranged it so Aelin has to fight one of the Valg. He's like, I have a great idea. You can just fight the Valg and then we'll just take him home with us. She climbs into the ring. She gives him a name because you remember he was like, you can give any name you want. I told them you were with the Red Desert Assassins. Blondie here has dyed her hair red again. And she gives the name our girl Ansel. We met her in Assassin's Blade, okay? She is the queen of a kingdom in the Western Wastes that was taken over by the witches. Witches are her enemy. And we heard mention of her in Heir of Fire when Manon was talking to the Stygian spiders, okay? And we know that she has taken her kingdom back. Or we suspect she's taken her kingdom back. Anyway, so maybe there's a reason Aelin used that name. Maybe. Chaol's watching from the sidelines. He's cranky, but also worried. Which is pretty much his usual state. Like, Chaol in this book is cranky and worried and sad. All the time. Those are the three emotions he exists within. We kind of, like, rotate between the three of them. Sometimes we're feeling more worried. Sometimes we're more sad. It's just kind of where he exists. But he shouldn't be worried, because Aelin is even more impressive now than when she left. And she was impressive when he left. When she like, left to go to Wendlyn. Now she's, like, scary. And Chaol thinks to himself, it hadn't been a fair fight. Aelin had let it go on because Arobynn had wanted it to go on. And then he thinks, once she took out that clock tower and her magic was back, what checks would there be against her? Against Aedion and that Fey prince of hers and all of the warriors like them. A new world, yes, but a world in which the ordinary human voice would be nothing more than a whisper. Once again, I like both have to be Chaol's PR team, but also want to talk some sense into this boy. Because let's remember that less than a year ago, this man was like, I want this woman to be the mother of my children. Like, he was imagining like a whole life with them. Like, I need you to calm down. Also, right now, the alternative is like an actual demon. Like, your bestie who has a demon currently like inhabiting his body. So like the bar for like good leadership at this point is literally on the floor. Like, I think we can all agree, everyone, Chaol included, that like Aelin would be a better leader than the king. Like, come on, Chaol. Come on. Anyway, Aelin like pretty quickly makes work of the commander and literally chops his head off. As she gets off the fighting, I was going to say the stage, but I don't think it's called the stage in fighting. I don't know. I don't go to illegal pit fights. Arobynn is annoyed because she was supposed to knock him unconscious, not kill him, because they're going to drag him home, and then he was going to have a little Valg. So he's like a little bit annoyed with her, but she's like, don't even worry, I'm going to get you a Valg. boop, boop. And then he tells her where Sam was buried. And she knows immediately that this is just like another way to like indebt herself to him. Like it's another favor. So he will owe her a favor. But she's also like grateful for the information because she hasn't, since Sam has been killed, she hasn't visited his grave. And like that is something important that she wants to do before she leaves Rifthold. And she like notes that he's not buried where the other assassins are buried. He's buried in like some random courtyard. But like she's like kind of grateful for this. So despite the fact that it was meant to be like a sign of disrespect, she's grateful because she knows Sam like would rather be not at the keep. Back with the witches, Elide is doing the dishes and eavesdropping on the cook and trying to figure out the delivery schedule. Remember, she's trying to use the delivery caravans to escape when Astrid arrives. And Astrid's like, oh my gosh, I was gonna help with the dishes today. And I'm just going to slide up and help you. And everyone in the kitchen is frightened because they're not witches. They're like normal people. And the witches are scary ladies. And like, why the heck is she trying to help with the dishes? Like, that is not witch behavior. And Astrid's like, so weird. They're washing dishes next to each other. So I wash my dishes. And Astrid's like, this is a weird activity for this daughter of a lord to be doing. And Elide's like, I am just here to help people. I'm happy to help. So happy. And Astrid's like, the chain around your ankle indicates otherwise. And she's like, also, it's kind of weird that no one else in this place is chained up like a slave. Like, what makes you so dangerous, Elide Lock-in? And then this is the last one. She says to Elide, you know, men have always hated, feared our kind. Astrid went on. It's rare for them to catch us, to kill us, but when they do, oh, they delight in such horrible things. In the waste, they've made a machine to break us apart. The fools never realized that all they needed to do to torture our kind was to make us beg, was to keep us chained, to keep us tied to the earth. And then Astrid asks Elide how old she is, and Elide says 18. And then Astrid's like, oh, you must have been like 8 or 9 when magic fell. Witchlings who are your age or younger and never got the chance to fly because they didn't get magic until their first bleeding, until like they wouldn't have been able to fly. And Elide's like, that's a bummer for them, I guess. Like, why are you telling me this? And Astrid says, you've never heard the wind calling your name, Elide Lock-in? Never felt it tug at you? Never listened to it and yearned to fly towards the horizon? Off into foreign lands? And Elide's like, yep, don't know why I would. And Astrid's like, you're a witch, Elide. On your mother's side, you're Iron Teeth witch. We can spell it. You're a witch, you're a witch, you're a witch. You're a witch. And Elide's like, okay, interesting. Yeah, my mom died when I was like super young, so I like don't know actually that much about her. So like maybe I've never been told about that, but like it seems like possible. But she thinks that she like had no real magic. Like as a little girl, she didn't have magic. She like has red blood, not like blue blood like the witches. And she is pretty much fully human, but the fact that she has some witch blood in her makes her a little scared because she knows the Duke is up to something. The like breeding situation with the witches, and she is worried that if her uncle kind of catches wind that she's a witch, that he will use her as a bargaining chip with the Duke. And so she needs to run, and she needs to run soon and far. And so she sneaks up to Manon's room and she starts stealing gold from her. When she was up there cleaning, she realized that Manon has like a lot of gold. And Astrid immediately catches her and is like, hey, girly, what the fuck are you doing? Like, are you so dumb? She's like, hey, girly, what are you doing? WTF. This is a bad idea. And Elide's like, do you know what they're doing to the yellow legs down there? Like, I gotta go. I am not interested in that. I gotta GTFO. And Astrid's like, at least we know now that you're not his spy, witchling. Like, we have learned that you are not a spy. And Elide's like, don't call me a witchling. And Astrid goes, is it really so bad to be a witch? And Elide's like, I'm not really a witch. I'm nobody. I am nothing. And Astrid says, everybody is something. Even the most common witch has her coven. But who has your back, Elide Lock-in? And Elide says, no one. And Astrid says, there's no such thing as a witch being alone. Who's adopting her? Astrid is like, I found a little friend and I'm gonna keep her. Of course, like Manon arrives like almost immediately, and she's had a rough day. She's had to break up like a bunch of fights, and now there's not only Astrid in her room, but this girl, and she stinks of fear. And they just started on the yellow legs, and so Manon is like, what is going on? And she comes in and Astrid's immediately like, we need to help her. We need to help this little young lady. And Manon's like, she's like barely even a witch. She has like a little tiny drop of witch blood in her system. And like, we're busy. We have other stuff we need to be doing rather than helping this girl. And Astrid's like, she's just a baby. Look at her. She's just a tiny baby. We need to help her. And she's a tiny baby. She's barely more than a witchling. You told me to keep an eye on her. Manon is so annoyed. She told Astrid to keep an eye on her because she was worried she was a spy, not because she wanted her to adopt her like a lost puppy. And so Manon turns to Elide and says, take my money and go. Like, take what you need to steal, like, whatever, to steal it, I guess. My third, Astrid, has to go clean up some wyvern poop because she's really getting on my last nerve. And Astrid is like, and yet you tolerate a wyvern who sniffs flowers and makes puppy eyes at this girl. And Manon is like, I'm literally gonna kill you, Astrid. You're driving me cuckoo bananas, but not in front of the little nugget, not in front of Elide. She is just a little baby. So Manon is walking Elide down the stairs. She's like, okay, obviously you can keep the money, that's fine. Don't try to bribe anyone with it. They will literally just turn you in. So just like keep it until you escape. Use this to like start a new life once you're out of here. Also, like, what's the plan? Like, there's nothing close by at all. So unless you plan, and then she realizes that that's why Elide was looking at those maps. She's planning to use those delivery caravans to get the heck out of here. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're so sneaky and smart. And Manon is like, what is the deal with your uncle anyway? Like, why does he make you play at servant? And also, like, why hasn't he already given you to the Duke? Like, I bet he knows that you have a little bit of witch blood in you. Like, why isn't he giving you to the Duke? And Elide's like, I don't know. He really likes games. Also, he might be waiting for, like, one of you to, like, confirm the fact that I, like, truly am a witch and not, like, he's not just, like, making it up. Look who's here. So, as they're walking downstairs, they notice that Uncle Vernon is waiting outside of Elide's bedroom door. And Uncle Vernon is like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you guys are getting along. I was a little bit worried about you. Elide is like kind of shy, and Manon, you are a ruthless murderer, so was a little concerned. And Manon is like, I'm not in the habit of forcing my servants. Like, I'm not a monster. We only kill men. Don't be weird. And Uncle Vernon is like, only slaughtering men like pigs, correct? And Manon says, their deaths equate to their behavior in life. Slay. And then Vernon turns to Elide and says, allying yourself with the witches? How ruthless of you. And Elide lowers her eyes to the ground and she says, there's nothing to ally against, Uncle. And Manon's like, why are you here again? Gross, terrible man. Get out. Maybe I'm going to kill you just for like fun. You're like bothering me. And Uncle Vernon is like, I just wanted to check on Elide. It's a hard day for her. Her dad was a traitor and a rebel for like a few months after Terrasen fell, and today is the anniversary of the day he was caught and executed. And Elide realizes that she had forgotten that it was the anniversary of her father's death and hadn't said her like usual prayers, and so she's like a little bit torn up about it. And then Manon turns to Vernon and says, you are a useless worm. Go spew your nonsense elsewhere. And Uncle Vernon says, what would your grandmother say about your behavior? And Manon literally like growls at him until he runs away, which we love. And Manon follows Elide into her teeny tiny bedroom, which is fit for her teeny tiny girl. And she immediately says to Elide, you can choose, witchling, blue or red. What? Does your blood run blue or red? You decide. If it runs blue and it turns out I have jurisdiction over you, little shits like Vernon can't do as they will to my kind, not without my permission. If your blood runs red, well, I don't particularly care about humans, and seeing what Vernon does with you might be entertaining. Why would you offer this? Manon gave her a half smile, all iron teeth and no remorse. Because I can. If my blood runs blue, won't it confirm what Vernon suspects? Won't he act? A risk you'll have to take. He can try to act on it and learn where it gets him. A trap, and Elide was the bait. Claim her heritage as a witch, and if Vernon took her to be implanted, Manon could have the grounds to kill him. She had a feeling Manon might hope for that. It was not just a risk, it was a stupid, suicidal risk, but better than nothing. The witches who lowered their eyes for no man until she could get away. Perhaps she might learn a thing or two about what it was like to have fangs and claws and how to use them. Blue, Elide said. My blood runs blue. Good choice, witchling, Manon said. The word was a challenge and an order. She turned away, but glanced over her shoulder. Welcome to the Blackbeaks, witchling. Elide stared after her. She had likely just made the biggest mistake of her life, but it was strange. Strange, that feeling of belonging. She's a witch. She's a witch. She chose blue. She's a witch. She's a witch. She's a witch. We love it. Welcome to the witchdom. Back in Rifthold, Aelin and Aedion are vibing on the roof for their shift on the watch because they're watching for the Kingsmen. So no one knows where Aelin's apartment is except Arobynn. We don't trust him. And like, you know, she could get found out. And so they're just like on the watch for Kingsmen. Aedion is getting bored during his recovery. Like Aelin is just kind of making him hang out at the house because remember he was like brutally tortured for a month. So like he has to rest for a few days. And he's kind of getting bored. And he's also like, what are we doing next? Like, what's the plan? Like, are we going to Terrasen? Do we need to wait for Prince Rowan, your new bestie friend? Like, what's going on? And Aelin is like, stop calling him Prince. It's weird. Like, he's just Rowan. And Aedion's like, he's only one of the coolest, fiercest, bestest warriors on the land. Like, I had a poster of him and his boys in my bedroom as a child. He doesn't say that last part. But like, if children in Terrasen were to have posters in their bedroom, Aedion would have had a poster of Rowan in his bedroom. You know, like that is the vibe. Also they like this is canon, this is from the text. All of the Aedion and all of his friends used to tell stories about the cadre around the campfire. And Aelin is like, do not tell him that. It will go straight to his head. The last thing he needs is like an ego boost. We learn that in Terrasen, only one person takes the blood oath. And Aedion had always assumed that he was going to take the blood oath to Aelin. It's like essentially how you like declare like your second. It only goes to one member in a ruler's cohort, and it should be Aedion's by rights. Like he's her cousin, and like is like had been kind of promised this since he was a child. And Aelin's like, anyway, I don't really want to talk about that, but we're not headed to Terrasen quite now because we have to go get the amulet of Moranth from Arobynn first. And Aedion is just like plotting because he's like heard the stories about Arobynn, and he's just like, I am so excited to get to kill that man. Who isn't? And then he says, after we get the amulet, are you going to free magic? And Aelin's like, yeah, but I can't tell you my plan yet. My plan is still a secret. My scheme is still a secret. And Aedion doesn't ask about Dorian, but he knows that he's planning on killing him. He's hoping that he's going to be able to get to Dorian before Aelin can, so he can kind of spare his cousin from having to make that actual like killing blow. And then Aedion says, and then we'll go to Terrasen. We'll need to get there before the first snow, because otherwise we'll have to wait until the spring. Like, we can't go cross the mountains in the winter. Also, we're going to need money for an army and stuff, so if you have a plan for that, that would be helpful. And Aedion's like, and there's that whole deal with the blood oath. When you're ready, like, I'm ready. Like, Aelin's like, are you sure you still want to swear it to me? And Aedion's like, of course, it was my right then and now. I can wait until we get to Terrasen, but it's going to be me who takes it, no one else. And Aelin's like, for sure. I think someone's calling my name. I actually have to go. And Chaol shows up. Chaol was not calling her name. She was pretending because she didn't want to talk about that anymore. Chaol shows up and he's like, turns out the Valg burnt down the entire shadow market. Hi. And Chaol's like, anyway, it's obviously your fault because the king found out that's where the rebels bought supplies, and he also used fire, like your whole thing, Aelin. Like, you are the fire-breathing lady, and so clearly it was a message for you. And he's like, are you going to do something to, like, stop this? He's, like, brutalizing the city. Are you going to do anything? How many people in the city need to die? Are they all expendable? And Aelin goes, need I remind you, Captain, that you went to Endover and did not blink at the slaves, at the mass graves? Need I remind you that I was starved and chained, and you let Duke Parrington force me to the ground at Dorian's feet while you did nothing? And now you have the nerve to accuse me of not caring, when many of the people in this city have profited off the blood and misery of the very people you ignored. And Chaol's like, the city needs protecting. There are, like, still good peoples here. And Aelin says, or maybe I should let the city burn. Maybe we should let the world burn. Okay. I do get where Aelin's coming from. Chaol is overstepping. But he is worrying, and if Aelin were to, like, really reel in the conversations around burning the city down, maybe he wouldn't be so worried about her burning the city down. I get that he's being annoying, and, like, Aelin, like, has some rights to kind of, like, bother him a bit. But, like, I'm just saying it might be more productive to be like, hey, buddy, I'm not going to burn the city down. Like, my priority is this, but I'm going to try to make sure as many people are safe here as well. Because I care about innocent lives, period. Like, we know in Aelin's heart that's how she feels. But, like, she just needs to set some of Chaol's worries at ease. Should it be her job? I don't know. But I'm just saying it might be better if she did this. Anyway, Aelin leaves, and now the boys are vibing up on the roof. Aedion and Chaol are. And Aedion's like, hey, Chaol, if you keep speaking to her that way, I'm going to kill you. And Chaol's like, okay. Anyway, did you learn anything about Dorian while you were in the castle? And Aedion's like, you insult my queen and yet had the nerve to ask me for that information? And Chaol says, please, just tell me. Today has been bad enough. People are disappearing. We can't find where the Valg are taking them. And rebels are planning to move to another city to, like, prepare as the Valg are going to spread. The Valg are spreading. They've taken over the city so thoroughly that we think they're preparing to move to other cities. And Aedion's like, are you going to leave? Are you going to go to another city to help them? And Chaol's like, no, I'm not going to leave without Dorian. And Aedion says, he came to me in the dungeons, taunted me. There was no sign of the man inside. He didn't even know who Sorsha was. And Chaol's like, Ardelane needs to have a future. And Aedion says, so make yourself a king. Like, become the future that Ardelane needs. And Chaol's like, I'm not fit to be king. And Aedion's like, okay, you might not have a choice. Like, right now the only alternative we have to Dorian really is Holland, his evil little brother. His vaguely evil little brother. And Chaol's like, are you guys going to kill Holland? And Aedion's like, no, we don't kill children. Don't be rude. Aedion's like, we are not enemies. You can trust us. You can trust Aelin. And Chaol's like, no, I can't. Not anymore. She keeps making jokes about how she's going to burn the city down, and I think she might be serious. And Aedion goes, okay, then it's your loss. Good luck. Aelin is off on a little adventure. She goes down to the sewers, she tracks the Valg down and finds this creature that looks identical to the clock tower gargoyles, and it like emerges from the water and it's like creepy and spooky and it's like talking, and she calls it a word hound, and essentially they are being used to track Aedion, and the king's voice like speaks through it, and it seems like he kind of like is able to possess these like gargoyles and use them to like navigate and communicate with people. They're like spooky yuki vibes. When she gets back to the apartment, Aedion is like super stressed out because she was gone for 4 hours instead of the 2 hours that she said she was going to be gone for, and he just has like very overprotective vibes, and it immediately icks Aelin out. She is like not used to having people like look after her and like care for her at this level of detail, and she's not a fan, to be honest. Aelin can tell that like Aedion is getting like a little restless. He's getting a little stir crazy back at the house, and he's like, okay, we're gonna go on a little field trip, and they're going out and they bump into Nesryn. Nesryn's across the street, I think probably doing like stakeout, and they're like, hey, do you want to come with us to the bar? And Nesryn's like, sure. And Aedion immediately starts flirting with Nesryn, mostly because he's bored, but also because Nesryn's really pretty. And Aelin is like, stop, don't flirt with her. She's with Chaol. And Nesryn's like, not really. Like, sort of, but like not really. Like, he can still flirt with me. And Aelin's like, I don't even care if you're with Chaol. It's like not even a big deal to me, so like don't say that you're not with him on my behalf, because I like don't even care. I don't care at all. And Nesryn's like, okay. You guys are so annoying. Nesryn just like truly wants to work. Like, she just like wants to work, and she's having to deal with the interpersonal drama of Chaol and Aelin, and she's kind of over it. Anyway, they all go to a bar, they drink and they play cards, and Aelin asks all about Nesryn's family, and she learns about like her history, and she like learns a lot about her. They have a lovely time, and they're like kind of become friends. On their way home, they encounter this man who, quote, moves like a predator, and Aelin like readies her weapons, but then she catches a whiff of pine and snow. It's Rowan! Aelin loosed a shuddering breath, and a small whimpering noise came out of her. A sob. And then she was sprinting down the alley, flying as though the winds themselves pushed at her heels. She flung herself on the man, crashing into him hard enough that anyone else might have gone rocking back into the stone wall. But the male grabbed her to him, his massive arms wrapping tightly around and lifting her up. Nesryn made to approach, but Aedion stopped her with a hand on her arm. Aelin was laughing as she cried, and the male was just holding her, his hooded head buried in her neck, as if he were breathing her in. Who was that? Nesryn asked. Aedion smiled. Rowan. Aelin had missed him so much, and she's like, how the heck are you here? I told you to go stay back in Wendolyn. And Rowan is like, I actually stowed away on a ship and then wandered around in the slums until I caught your scent, and then I found you. I have like a lot to tell you, but I just want to like check in. You're safe, you're not hurt, everyone's cool. And she's like, yeah. Aelin was like, I did tell you to stay back in Wendolyn. And he's like, there's a reason I'm here, and I will tell you more when we get somewhere private. But like, I came because I kind of had to. They get back to the apartment, and kind of like immediately, Aelin is like, wants Rowan kind of to herself. She takes Rowan back. Nesryn stays out. She doesn't come back to the apartment, but Aedion is in the main room, and she's like, Rowan has to go take a bath. He is really stinky. He's been stowed away on a ship for a couple weeks, so like, he does smell bad. Aedion is also giving off weird vibes. And so she's like, I don't want to deal with this right now. She makes him take a bath using all of her nice oils and bubbles, and then hands him her lavender soap to use. She mutely handed him her favorite lavender scented soap, which he sniffed at, sighed in resignation, and then began using. This moment is such a tremendously, like, it's this moment, but it's a really profoundly big moment, because I'm getting emotional. So in Assassin's Blade, there's a moment where Sam uses her lavender soap, and she yells at him. She yells at him for using her lavender soap because it's expensive, and she feels like he kind of like wasted it by using it on himself. And then when he dies, he smells like the cheap soap that she made him use. She made him use this cheap soap, and when she sees his body, she's laying next to him, and it smells like cheap soap because she wouldn't let him use her expensive stuff. And I think there was a lot of regret there, and she's just grown so much since then. And I think she's really recognized this idea that she is not promised tomorrow, that when she was with Sam, there was this feeling that they had forever. They had so much time, and she recognizes now that she doesn't have endless time. She doesn't have time with these people that she loves, and that she should be celebrating these little moments. She's just like celebrating and like sharing her love by sharing these things that she loves. And I love the fact that he sniffed at it, sighed in resignation, and then began using it, because he's not even grateful for it. This is not a gift that he's grateful for, and she doesn't need him to be grateful for it, because it is not about his gratitude for it. It's not about how much he appreciates it. It's about her like giving him something that is important to her. It's so sweet. I love it so much. And then after his bath, they go back to Aelin's room, and they're trying to find clothes for Rowan because his clothes smell really bad. And they're like in her her closet, like looking through her clothes, and for a moment she stared at Sam's old clothing, breathing in the faint smell of him still clinging to the fabric. She hadn't mustered the strength to go to his grave yet, but... And then Rowan says, "You don't have to give me those," Rowan said from behind her. She started a bit, twisted in place to face him. And Aelin's like, "There's not a lot of options. Like, I don't have a lot of men's clothing here." And she passes Rowan one of Sam's, like, t-shirts and a pair of his pants. And she's like, "I hope it fits." Sam had been 18 when he died. Rowan was a warrior honed by 3 centuries of training in battle. Like, he's just, like, a lot bigger. And then he's just kind of, like, looking through her closets. And he's complimenting all of her clothes. And Aelin says to him, "I would have pegged you for a proud member of the anti-finery crowd." And Rowan says, "Clothes are weapons too." And I love this. I think this is so, like, respectful. Like, he is very much respecting that in Aelin's craft as, like, her skill as an assassin. Part of the thing that made her so good was her ability to, like, shapeshift. And part of that is the clothes. The ability to, like, distract attention by the way she looked or to blend in. And, like, clothes were also, like, a weapon. And then Rowan paused in a black velvet gown, its tight sleeves and front were unadorned, the neckline skimming just below her collarbones. Unremarkable, save for the tendrils of gold embroidery creeping over the shoulders. Rowan angled the dress to look at the back, the true masterpiece. The gold embroidery continued from the shoulders, sweeping to form a serpentine dragon, its maw roaring towards the neck, the body curving down until the narrow tail formed the border of the lengthened train. Rowan loosed a breath. "I like this one best." She fingered the solid black velvet sleeve. "I saw it in a shop when I was 16 and bought it immediately. But when the dress was delivered a few weeks later, it seemed too old. It overpowered the girl I was, so I never wore it. It's hung here for 3 years." He ran a scarred finger down the gold spine of the dragon. "You are not that girl anymore," he said softly. "Someday I want to see you wear this." I love that. Okay, gorgeous. This will become important later. And now they're, like, alone in the bedroom, and Aelin says to Rowan, "I missed you." And Rowan says, "We were not apart that long, so, like, you probably shouldn't have missed me." And he says to her, "I once told you that the people you care about are weapons to be used against you. Missing me was a foolish distraction." And Aelin's like, "Okay, anyway, that was kind of rude, but, like, go off." And she lets him get changed, and the shirt doesn't fit him, and he's afraid to rip it. He doesn't want to rip Sam's shirt because he realizes this is, like, he very much understands what it is to lose a love, because he lost his mate, and so he doesn't want to rip it. He, like, recognizes that this is, like, one of the few pieces of Sam she has left, and so he's trying to be respectful of it. And so he's just vibing around shirtless. And Rowan's like, "Okay, we need to talk." And Aelin's like, "Good news or bad news?" And Rowan says, "The kind of news that makes me glad you don't have the power to set this room ablaze." And she's like, "Sick. But the news can wait. Like, it's not urgent news." And so Aelin is like, "We probably should go talk to Aedion, even though he's being a weirdo. Let's go." And he's just, like, being weird. And Aelin's like, "Why are you being weird? You were literally so obsessed with Rowan, like, literally yesterday. You were telling me about how you had a poster of him on your wall, and now you're being all weird and possessive." And Aedion goes, "If Prince Rowan wants formalities, I can grovel, but he doesn't look like someone who particularly cares." And then Rowan goes, "Whatever my queen wants." And Aelin is like, "I'm so sick of you. If you can have a pissing contest, go on the roof. Not in the house." And Rowan is like, "Aedion needs a bath too. Also, do you know who your dad is?" To Aedion. This has happened to Aedion more than once. It's a rude question, but somehow in conversation it keeps coming up that Aedion doesn't know who his dad is. Chaol also was like, "My dad's the worst. Do you know your dad?" Anyway, Rowan is now like, "Do you know who your dad is?" And Aedion's like, "My mom never told anyone who my father was." And Aelin's like, "Okay, out with it. I'm guessing you have some idea of who it is. Otherwise, this is a weird question." And Rowan says, "Doesn't he look familiar to you?" And Aelin's like, "He literally looks just like me. We, like, kind of look like twins." And Rowan's like, "Yeah, but, like, you met his father a few weeks ago. Gabriel." And Aedion immediately is like, "Oh my gosh, I am descendants of one of the cool guys. I had posters of him on my wall." And then it clicks into his brain. The reason his mom never said who his father was is because it was dangerous. If it had gotten out that Gabriel had fathered a son, Maeve would have, like, come for him and probably killed him if he knew. And so Aelin comes over, like, he's kind of, like, flustered by this news. There's, like, some stigma that comes to this, and also, like, again, there is this added threat of Maeve now. And Aelin brings this up. She says, "What does this mean as far as Maeve is concerned? Like, will Maeve try to claim him?" And Rowan is like, "Honestly, like, it would take an act of war. Like, we know who he is to you and to your court. It would be an act of war for Maeve to take him from you. So don't stress about it too much." And Aelin is like, "Still, this information doesn't leave this room. Like, this is top secret info." And then when they're chatting, it does come up that Rowan is blood oath to Aelin, and Aedion loses his mind because he was supposed to take the blood oath. And Aelin is like, "I am so sorry. Like, I didn't really know what the deal was. Also, like, wasn't thinking about you. It was kind of like a spur of the moment sort of thing." And, like, and, you know, and Aedion goes to break something Like, he, like, goes to, like, grab a little figurine off the mantle, and Aelin gets pissed. She's like, don't break anything. If you break anything, I will shove the shards down your throat. Like, this is my stuff. Stuff is important to me. I'm a material girl. And Aedion's like, how dare you let him take the blood oath? And Aelin says, I dared because it is my blood to give away. I dared because you did not exist for me then. Even if you had. Even if neither of you had taken it yet, I would still give it to him because he is my Karanam and he has earned my unquestioning loyalty. And Aedion is like, what about our unquestioning loyalty? What have you done to earn that? What have you done to save our people since you returned? Were you ever going to tell me about the blood oath? Or was that one just another one of your many lies? And Rowan goes to, like, fight him. But Aelin is like, stop. Do not fight my cousin. But she does say, get out and don't come back till you stop throwing your little temper tantrum to Aedion. She's like, no, that's not how you talk to me in my house. Get out. But don't beat him up. So, that's the haps. And then it's just Aelin and Rowan sitting in this room. And Rowan, like, is really looking at Aelin for the first time, and he recognizes, like, a sense of tiredness that washes over her, and he thinks, there it was, the weight that had slowly been crushing her. It killed them that he'd have to add to it when he told her the news he carried, the reason he disobeyed her first order to him. He could offer her nothing but the truth. You will make mistakes. You will make decisions, and sometimes you will regret those choices. Sometimes there won't be a right choice, just the best of several bad options. I don't need to tell you that you can do this. You know you can. I wouldn't have sworn the oath to you if I didn't think you could. They're, like, headed to bed for the evening, and Rowan is just thinking about the fact how much he hates the fact that he's become a weakness to her because she cares for him, and so that is not great. Like, really, the less people you care for, the better. And Aelin is thinking about how much easier it is to, like, be alone. She's kind of feeling just regretful over the way she talked to Aedion and just, like, the things that she's done in the past. And Rowan's like, don't even worry about it. You guys are, like, pretty equally matched in temper. Like, it'll be fine. And then he reveals his bad news. Essentially, the bad news is that Maeve has sent Lorcan to track Aelin down. Essentially, they suspect what the plan for Maeve is to like, hold off until Aelin finds the word key, and then use Lorcan to track Aelin to the word key. And he says, if Lorcan makes a move against you, he dies. And Aelin's like, okay. And then she explains to him that, like, the housing situation, she has her bedroom and then she has the guest room. Aedion is in the guest room, so Rowan is bunking with her. And Rowan says, this isn't like the fortress. People are going to think this means something. And Aelin says, then I'll issue a royal decree about my honorable intentions towards you over breakfast. And Rowan's like, what about your captain, Chaol? And Aelin's like, not really an issue anymore. And Rowan's like, tell me what happened. And Aelin says, he said what occurred here to my friend, to him and Dorian while I was away at Wendelin, that it was my fault and that I was a monster. And then Rowan says, if you're a monster, then I'm a monster. We love the Notebook Corps. If you're a bird, I'm a bird. Rowan's version is, if you're a monster, I'm a monster. They go and they lay down in bed together, and he's reminding himself, he's like, boundaries, lines, limits. Those were his new favorite words. He reminded himself as he grimaced at the silken sheets, even as the huff of her breath still touched his cheek. He's like, I cannot sleep with this girl. It would be very inappropriate. And Aelin comes out in the teeniest, tiniest little lace nightgown, and Rowan's like, you forgot pants. You are not wearing pants, my friend. And Aelin is like, it gets hot. And Rowan's like, okay, sure. And she lays down so her back is to him, and Rowan's like looking at the tattoo on her back, and he's like, there's a couple spots on your tattoo I need to touch up. And then she goes, and then he asks her, are all your nightgowns like this? And she says, so curious about my negligee, Prince. What would the others say? Maybe you should issue a decree to clarify. Yes, I have more. Don't worry. If Lorcan's gonna murder me in my sleep, I might as well look good. And Rowan says, vain until the bitter end. And Aelin says, is there a specific color you'd like me to wear? If I'm going to scandalize you, I should at least do it in something you like. Rowan continues, you're a menace. She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks despite the news Rowan had given her. She was fairly certain they were done talking for the night when his voice rumbled across the bed. Gold. Not yellow. Real metallic gold. You're out of luck, she said into her pillow. I would never own anything so ostentatious. And then Rowan just lies there unable to sleep because he's so obsessed with Aelin. The next morning, Aelin starts making breakfast and Aedion comes and joins her. He spent the night on the roof, like, taking the watch, and then he, like, but he, you know, he's thinking about his actions, and so the first thing he says to her is, like, I'm ashamed of what I said to you. And Aedion explains that he spent so long with, like, the blood oath as this, like, end goal, this one thing that he was, like, working towards and fighting towards. It felt, like, really devastating to know that she had already given it away. And Aelin is like, I should have told you. Like, when you asked about it, I should have told you, and I'm sorry that I didn't, but I'm happy to have you swear the oath too. And Aedion says, in Terrasen, there's only one. And Aelin says, what if we made a new tradition? Like, I can have 2. I can have as many as I want. I'm the boss now. I'm the captain now. And Aedion says, okay, bet. But not until you're crowned. Not until I can swear it in front of the world. And Aelin's like, okay, way to be dramatic. But they have mended their cousin tiff. They're back in each other's good graces again. It's a Dorian chapter. Let's check to see if Dorian's still having a bad time. Oh my gosh, he still is. Apparently, Dorian is in a spooky room in the basement where all the crowns of the kingdoms his father has conquered. Cool. The crowns of the conquered nations, the demon prince said. More will be added soon, perhaps the crowns of other worlds too. He backed away, tried to retreat into a pocket of darkness where even the demon prince couldn't find him. The demon laughed, spineless human. No wonder she had lost her head. He tried to shut out the voice. Tried to. He wished that woman had killed him. Okay, Dorian's still having a bad time. Glad we checked on him. Back with the witches. Manon storms into Duke Parrington's office and is like, why aren't the 13 being allowed to see the yellow legs? Apparently, on, like, the first couple days, the 13, like, in the initial setup, like, the 13 were allowed to go down to the yellow legs, and now they're not being allowed down there. Like, she is not allowed down there anymore. And Duke Parrington's like, get out. Why are you just storming into my office? And Manon sees that behind him, Kaltain is with a young guard and appears to be burning him in a big, giant black flame. And Manon's like, what the heck is happening over there? And Duke Parrington's like, oh, that's just shadow fire. And Manon's like, what the heck? Like, where is that coming from? What the heck is that? And Duke Parrington's like, leave. This is not for you. And Kaltain says, it's from me. The power was sleeping in me, but now it is awake. And she gives a little demonstration. It essentially causes pain and, like, suffering without actually, like, burning the person or anything around them. It's just, like, feels like you're burning. She's like, okay, back to the real reason I'm here while your friend burns a person alive. Why aren't the black beaks being allowed down there? And Duke Parrington's like, to be honest, it's none of your business, but, like, this experiment was successful, and now we don't want them to be disturbed. And Manon's thinks that her grandmother will be mad because they are Iron Teeth witches meant to fight in the king's wyvern army, not breeding chattel. And then Duke Parrington threatens her as she begins to question him. And they chat about the upcoming war, and he mentions that Grandmother Blackbeak is working on a weapon for the army to be used against the humans. This is very important. Remember that little tidbit. Keep it in the corner of your mind. Keep it on the shelf in the back. We're going to come back to that in a couple books, I think. Meanwhile, Elide has snuck up to the Eyrie. It's nighttime. She snuck up to the Eyrie. When she had gone back to her rooms, like, for the evening, she sensed that someone was in there. And so instead of going into her rooms and getting, like, trapped, she's very concerned that they're going to kidnap her and throw her in the basement to be bred with the yellow legs. She hiked up to the Eyrie, and she sleeps next to Abraxos. She was really nervous when she laid down next to him, but he used his wing to cover her because it was cold. He used it as a little blanket for her. Now it's morning, and Manon has hiked up there with the 13, and she is telling them what she knows about what is happening to the yellow legs, and telling them about the deal with the Kaltain and the Shadowfire, and just, like, in general warning the girlies to be careful out there because things are getting weird. And Elide is, like, trying to sneak out there. She's like, oh my god, if they catch me, I'm gonna be in so much trouble. Like, I shouldn't be hearing this. I shouldn't be doing this. She's trying to sneak out, and she's, like, almost out. When Manon says, if you had any backbone, Elide, you would have stayed beside Abraxos until we left. And Manon obviously knew she was there the whole time. Like, Manon has got way superior senses. She smelled her, like, immediately. She smelled her on the stairs. And then, like, they also can see extraordinarily well in the dark, so they could just, like, see her lying there. Like, it's kind of embarrassing that Elide thought she was sneaky, honestly. Manon's, like, kind of TBH. It's kind of weird that, like, you slept up here. Like, a weird choice. And Elide explains that there was someone in her room last night, and so she had to sleep up here for safety reasons. And Astrid is like, who? And Elide's like, I don't know. I didn't go in there and, like, chat them up. I was worried they were going to try to take me. Meanwhile, Manon says to Abraxos, aren't you supposed to eat young women? Not provide them a blanket with your wing? And Abraxos glares at Manon because obviously he's not going to eat his new bestie. His new bestie, Elide, is not going to be a snack. Like, they're best friends. And Manon's kind of impressed that she slept like, that Elide slept curled up next to a wyvern. Like, that's kind of brave. And she says to Elide, I've got a job for you. Under this mountain, there's a chamber where the Duke is keeping a coven of yellow leg witches and using them to create demon babies. I need you to go down there and tell me what you see. And Elide's like, what if I said no? Because, like, that sounds very dangerous. And Manon's like, so yeah, you will, because you're mine now. You belong to me. So, like, figure it out. I don't know how you're gonna make it work, but, like, that's kind of not my problem. You need to get down there and then tell me what you see. Don't tell anyone else, but just, like, head on down there. And Elide's like, no, it is, like, way too dangerous. Manon says, okay, then we will toast to you at your wedding to your little Valg husband, because we will sell you off faster than your uncle could. She says to Elide, we do not tolerate cowards in the Blackbeak's ranks, or did you think your protection was free? And then Manon points the door. You're to stay in my chambers if your own are compromised, wait at the bottom of the stairs. She's like, also, I don't need you sleeping with Abraxos. Come sleep in my room. I will make you a little bed in the corner. Once Elide leaves, Sorrel's like, what if she tells the Duke? And Manon's like, she's not that ruthless. Like, she's not gonna cross us to tell the Duke. That's, like, not her. And Astrid's like, what if she gets caught? Manon says, if she gets caught, then we'll find some other way to figure it out. Like, this is a good attempt at any. And Astrid says, and you have no qualms about them killing her or using that shadow fire on her? Manon is like, Astrid, stop trying to have a moral compass. That's not how we work. Elide will be fine or she won't. That's not our problem. And then Astrid kind of, like, leaves. Manon's thinking to herself, cunning. That's how she would get around the Duke with his schemes and weapons. She might work for his king, but she would not tolerate being left ignorant. Manon is like, I'm going to know what's happening here in this place. They're using me, and I want to know to what end. And then Elide sleeps in Manon's room, and it's a little bit scary to her, but Manon makes her a little bed of hay in front of the fireplace, so she stays warm. She's like a little pet bed in the corner. She's like, this is my pet Elide. I found her. She was wandering around in my room. It's like the cat distribution system, but for small girls. For small young women. Sometimes a witch just gets one. Now I have a pet girl. The next day, Elide's like, I'm going to work in the laundry room. She's going to use this as a way to get information about the basement. She hasn't learned much, but yesterday she had seen the blood-soaked clothes, like, come up from the basement. Cloths, like sheets and blankets and clothes, and they're soaked in blue blood, not red blood, so she knows it's the witches. And so she's like, okay, definitely something's going on there. And Elide is going up the stairs, and she hears her uncle being a creeper with Kaltain. And Elide goes up and, like, interrupts them, and she's like, actually, I was sent to get Kaltain for the wing leader. And then Vernon is like, she's not authorized to meet with Kaltain. Like, there's no reason Manon needs to talk to her. Elide says, and you are authorized to meet with Kaltain? That seems unlikely. And Uncle Vernon is like, I know about your witch blood. And Elide grabs Kaltain. Kaltain is cold as ice, like an ice sculpture. And Elide, like, takes her away and gets her to another hallway, like, away from her uncle, and she, like, then turns to Kaltain and is like, where can I take you that you will be safe? Like, I don't actually need to take you to Manon. Like, I want to take you somewhere where you'll be safe. And Kaltain doesn't speak, and she's got bruises all over her arms. She's got cuts everywhere. And Elide, like, pretty quickly realizes there is nowhere safe for this girl. Like, this girl is just, like, being brutalized, and there's nothing really anyone can do to help her. And so she kind of just leaves her and is at least able to save her from her uncle, but has to just kind of leave her. And then she goes up to Manon and she's like, hey Manon, I have a scheme. And Manon's like, did you get into the basement yet? And Kaltain is like, I have a little plan, a little plot, a little scheme, but I need some poison first. And Manon's like, okay, I'll get you some poison, girly. Back in Rifthold, Aedion is training again with Rowan in the warehouse. And Aedion is thinking about how worrying it is that Lorcan is here because he's a scary dude. Also because he's a little worried Maeve is going to send Daddy Gabriel next. And, like, that seems like things could be weird. You know, he's just, like, kind of pondering that. At the same time, Aelin is like, okay, we're done working out for today. Aedion is still recovering, so we need to take it easy. We don't need to go too crazy. And Aedion instead decides to fight Rowan because he doesn't want to be done yet. He's like, I still want to fight people. And Rowan obviously kicks his butt because Rowan is cooler than everyone. And then he whispers in Aedion's ear, your queen gave you an order to stop for your own good because she needs you healthy, because it pains her to see you injured. Do not ignore her command next time. As he's, like, lying on the ground. And, Rowan added, if you ever speak to her again the way you did last night, I will rip out your tongue and shove it down your throat. Do you understand? And Aedion is like, yep, I do. I understand. Yes, sir. Then Lysandra arrives and she starts to talk to Aelin. And Aedion is being, like, weirdly flirty about Lysandra. Like, he's talking to Rowan, but he's being like, I wish she would talk to me because she's so pretty. Lysandra only talks to Aelin. And Rowan is like, I'm so glad Aelin found a new friend. And Aedion's like, yeah, but I wish she would talk to me because our new friend is so pretty. And meanwhile, on the other side of the room, the girlies are talking, and Lysandra's like, oh my gosh, who's that hottie that you brought? Who's this blonde, tall hottie? Not Aedion. The other one. And Aelin's like, that's Rowan. Lysandra's like, nice. And she brought him clothes because Nesryn said that, like, Nesryn, like, passed on the information that Aelin had a guest. And also Arobynn spotted prison wagons with the people who were missing. Remember how the Valg prisoners were no longer in the sewers? They're in prison wagons headed to Moranth, where the witches are. Suspicious. And so she just, like, passes on that information. And Lysandra just, like, popped by for a second. She's leaving for a lunch appointment. And then asks Lysandra, like, how long will you have to continue working to repay your debts? And Lysandra says a long while. The amount continues to increase. I could kill Clarice if you wanted me to. Like, no big deal. I could kill her if you wanted me to. And Lysandra is like, I am good for now. Thank you so much for the offer. That is so sweet of you. But, like, I will let you know. She leaves, and then Chaol's over. Chaol is over, and he's looking at a map. He's giving the side eye to Rowan. Aelin is essentially asked Chaol to help her fill in a map of the castle. And Chaol says, is this so you can knock down the clock tower? And Aelin's like, maybe. She doesn't want to give her schemes to Chaol because Chaol's being a little poop head. But she does convey the message that Lysandra left about the people being sent to Moranth in the prison wagons. And she tells Chaol to stay out of the sewers. She's like, I've got a scheme. Don't go in there. But also, maybe go get those prison wagons. And she mentions Nesryn bringing Rowan clothes. And Chaol realizes that Nesryn has sort of befriended Aelin. He is like not surprised at this. Like he is like, oh, I should have anticipated this. Like Aelin is like very charismatic. Like of course she would have made friends with Nesryn. Like I should have seen this coming. But now it seems like Nesryn's gonna be on Team Aelin and not Team Chaol. And it really would have been helpful if she was on Team Chaol. Because once again, he is very worried that Aelin is going to free magic and then immediately kill Dorian. And so to have Nesryn not being supporting him anymore is a little nerve-wracking. Rowan and Aelin are going out on a tour of the city. Aelin wants to show him the nice parts of the city and like kind of tell him about her life growing up and like everything that she's gone through, and also wants to do a little bit of recon. You know, they need to like scope some things out. There's been no sign of Lorcan so far. They are having a really nice time until they come to a flower stall and Rowan freezes him. It reminds him of Lyra, his pregnant mate who died because she also ran a flower stall. And he says aloud, I didn't deserve her. Rowan said quietly. Aelin swallowed hard. There were wounds in both of them that had yet to heal, but this one. As always, she could only offer him one truth in exchange for another. I didn't deserve Sam. And so she takes him and she's like, I know, I'm going to take you to my favorite place. Because you're really sad. Which is the rafters of the theater. Because she used to come up here all the time and like listen to the performances. And Rowan said they've never been to a theater like this. You should build one in Terracin. And Aelin's like, okay, my people are starving, so like priorities. And Rowan is like, maybe not right away. Like definitely take care of the starving first. But like artists are essential. Like this should be a priority in our kingdom. And she wishes that he could hear the Stygian suite. And she explains to him that she always cried at the final piece. And that's why she started playing piano, so she could capture a little bit of that magic and bring it home. And Rowan is like, is there a piano here? And she's like, yep. And they go up on the stage and there is a piano there. And Aelin is like, I haven't played in a really long time and like I'm not very good. Like I probably wasn't good to start with, but also I haven't practiced in a while. And she's thinking about the story of the orchestra who had all been executed because of their rebellion from the last book. And they're like on the stage where the orchestra last performed this like sign of rebellion, and she's like thinking about them, and she's just at this like this place where she experienced so much joy and this love of art and music and beauty. And she says to Rowan, if Lorcan was stupid about it, I'd rather he not report back to me that I'm lousy at playing. And Rowan's like, come on, play. He's like egging her on. And then she says, I haven't played since Nehemia died. And then he says, okay, we don't have to today. And then Aelin thinks there might not be another day. I would consider my life very sad indeed if I never played again. And so she starts playing. It was not the sorrowful, lovely piece she had played for Dorian, and it was not the light, dancing melodies she'd played for sport. It was not the complex and clever pieces she'd played for Nehemia and Chaol. This piece was a celebration, a reaffirmation of life, of glory, of the pain and beauty in breathing. Perhaps that's why she had gone to hear it performed every year, after so much killing and torture and punishment, as a reminder of what she was, of what she struggled to keep. Up and up it built, the sound breaking from the pianoforte like the heart song of a god. Until Rowan drifted over to stand beside the instrument until she whispered to him, now. And the crescendo shattered into the world, note after note after note. The music crashed around them, roaring through the emptiness of the theater. The hollow silence that had been inside her for so many months overflowed with sound. She brought the piece home to its final explosive triumphant chord. When she looked up, panting slightly, Rowan's eyes were lined with silver, his throat bobbing. Somehow, after all this time, her warrior prince still managed to surprise her. He seemed to struggle for words, but he finally breathed, show me. Show me how you did that. So she obliged him. Okay. Am I crying again? This is embarrassing. We're dealing with a lot of Sam grief. And Sam grief is the one thing to, like, sure to get to me. Because she plays for him the Stygian suite. She plays for him the Stygian suite. And the Stygian suite music, she got the sheet music, was a gift from Sam. Sam had, after she'd gone to the orchestra with Sam for what would turn out to be the last time, he gifted her the sheet music of the Stygian suite. And so she's playing this music that, in some ways, is a gift from Sam. For Rowan. She never played it for Chaol. She never played it for Dorian or Nehemia. This is something like really special to her, and I just think it's really beautiful that she's sharing it with Rowan. They hang out in the theater, and Aelin teaches Rowan how to play the piano for a bit until eventually like someone is like there's a lot of piano noises coming from the theater that's closed, so I'm gonna go check it out. And then they, like, flee. And they go home and they stop on the bank on the way, and Aelin gets some money. And Rowan is like, are you just, like, bankrolling this whole thing? Like, all of us living in your house and, like, all of the stuff that's happening. Are you just, like, completely funding it? And Aelin says, for now. And Rowan's like, until... And Aelin says, you'll see. She's a scheming lady. She's a scheming lady. Scheming ladies are scheming. And she's scheming hard. Chaol and Nesryn are out in the forest. They did follow those prison wagons out into the forest outside of Rifthold, and they've just killed a bunch of Valg. Killed 4. Nesryn killed 6. Chaol's really up in his kill count. And Chaol thinks to himself, she's so beautiful. He's a little bit obsessed with Nesryn. He thinks she's pretty. And he says to her, you fought well, he told her. Nesryn's like, I know. Yep. She's like, we need to get these people we saved to the river. The boat won't wait forever. They're getting them on a boat out of the city. And Chaol's like, maybe we could get a drink after. And Nesryn's like, I thought we were friends. And Chaol's like, we are friends. And Nesryn says, friends don't really spend time with each other when they're feeling sorry for themselves, or bite each other's head off when asking difficult questions. And Chaol's like, I said I was sorry. He's being kind of like a whiny baby. And Nesryn still goes out to drink with him because she's nice, I guess. I wouldn't. And then as they're leaving, Nesryn is like, why is the king bringing all these people to Moranth anyway? And Chaol's like, it's probably Aelin's fault. I'm thinking, probably her fault, if I had to guess. And Nesryn's like, no, that's clearly not true. He's clearly been planning this for a while, like since before Aelin. Something big is coming. Okay, that's foreboding. At night, Aelin is sneaking out of her apartment, careful not to wake Rowan. He's just sleeping, snoozing in the bed next to her as she sneaks out of there. She waited until Chaol and his men would be out of the city tracking the Valg and the prison wagons because she needed to do something in the sewers. And there is a Valg commander down there, and she is staying just far enough back where the Valg commander won't be able to hear her. And then she changes her voice to make it sound like she's having a conversation about finding the key with a man. She's like,
yeah, I found the key at their house. It was just where I thought it would be.
Oh, really? That's great.
She probably has a better man voice. Apparently, Lysandra taught her how to make like a man voice. And she's leading Lorcan, who had been following her all night, straight into the Valg nest. Sneaky, sneaky. And then she sneaks out of the sewers and locks Lorcan down there. She's only 3 blocks away from her apartment when someone slams her into an alley wall. Lorcan is in a bad mood because Aelin did trap him in the sewers with the Valg princess. He apparently killed 6 of the Valg and 1 of the wordhounds. She is impressed about that because she's like, those wordhounds were annoying, so I'm glad Lorcan figured out how to kill them. And then Aelin says to him, why don't I show you what happens when you whip my friends, you spineless prick? Violence stands across those brutal features. Such a big mouth for someone without her fire tricks. Such a big mouth for someone who needs to mind his surroundings. Reminder here that Aelin is currently pinned against a wall as she's like taunting Lorcan. And then suddenly Rowan has a knife to Lorcan's throat. Aelin knows that Rowan woke up the minute she climbed out of bed. She knows that Rowan has been keeping an eye on her all night. And Rowan goes to Lorcan, give me a reason not to kill you right now. And Lorcan says, Maeve says if you kill me, she'll offer the king of Ardaline aid in this war. So if you kill me, the Queen Maeve is going to help the king of Ardaline. And Rowan doesn't really believe this because, like, why would she? Like, Maeve doesn't do things that are not completely self-serving. But he lets Lorcan go anyway. And then Lorcan says, also, why the F did you bind yourself to a mortal queen? It's going to be super weird when you're, like, sleeping in her bed and she's, like, an old grandmother lady. Haven't you seen Twilight? It's like Bella's worst nightmare. And Rowan's like, enough. No, I haven't seen Twilight. Rowan has definitely seen Twilight. No, I haven't seen Twilight. But, like, I bet they work it out. And then Aelin says, honestly, Rowan, I don't know how you put up with him for so many centuries. 5 minutes and I'm bored to tears. Lorcan says, watch yourself, girl. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in a week, but someday you'll trip up and I'll be waiting. Aelin says, really, you fail males in your dramatic speeches. She turns to walk away, a move she could make only because of the prince standing between them, but she looked back over her shoulder, dropping all pretense of amusement, of boredom. Let that killing calm rise close enough to the surface that she knew there was nothing human in her eyes, as she said to Lorcan, I will never forget. I will never forget. Not for one moment what you did to him that day in Dornell. Your miserable existence is at the bottom of my priority list, but one day, Lorcan, she smiled a little bit, one day I'll come to claim that debt too. Consider tonight a warning. And then her and Rowan leave. They go back into the apartment. They're in the warehouse, and all the light that they have is a lantern, and Rowan goes to her, busy night, princess? And Aelin says, busy but enjoyable. And Rowan says, you're gonna have to try harder to slip past me. And Aelin says, you and Aedion are just the worst. Like, sometimes I just want to go have a little fun. Sometimes I just want to go out and do some murder and do some scheming as a treat. And Rowan says, next time you want to bait Lorcan, you will tell me first. And Aelin says, no, it's like my business if I want to go run around and scheme a little bit. And Rowan says, not anymore. Like, you have people around you that you owe it to like protect yourself and be safe. So unfortunately you can't just do whatever you want. Aw, rude. Dorian Check-in time. He's walking around the dungeons, everyone's screaming, and he's still having a bad time. So that's the update on Dorian. Still having a bad time, this time in the dungeons. Back at Aelin's apartment, Lysandra comes over for like midday, and like on the counter there's just like an assortment of like random items like left over from breakfast, and then also a bunch of beef jerky. And Lysandra's like, this is kind of a gross meal, to be honest. And apparently they can only cook breakfast, and Rowan can only cook meat over an open flame. Like, he's a barbecue dad, and that's all he is, and he cannot change his ways. And then Lysandra says to Rowan, I don't believe we were introduced last time. Her queenliness was too busy. I like your fangs. And Rowan says, are you studying them so you can make some of your own when you change forms? Shapeshifter? And Aedion and Aelin are like, what? This is crazy. Lysandra's a shapeshifter? And Lysandra's like, no one knows, not even Arobynn. Which, like, is code for, like, this secret doesn't leave this room. And Aelin feels a little hurt. She feels a little lied to. All of her friends are keeping secrets from her, lying to her. I love Aelin, my little bestie queen. Bestie queen, you were keeping secrets from literally everyone constantly. Like, all of the time. All you do is secrets. So, like, I don't know if you can truly be hurt over this one, but that's okay. You can be hurt even sometimes when it's not rational. And Lysandra tells the story of being a child and being able to shape shift into whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted. And that's why she got kicked out from her house and why she wound up living with Clarice. And she had been living on the streets, actually, transforming into like whatever she needed to in order to survive when magic left. And she was stuck in this body. And she like doesn't even remember what her real face looks like. This is just the skin she was stuck in when magic was halted. And she is nervous that Aelin is going to consider the shapeshifting a threat, because like historically shapeshifters have been kind of persecuted because their power is so like dangerous and does pose kind of like such a threat. And Aelin says, I think that talent would make for a great ally and an even more entertaining friend. Like she immediately puts those fears to rest. And Rowan asks her, did you have a favorite form? And Lysandra says, anything big with claws. Anyway, Lysandra didn't actually come over to talk about shapeshifting. She came over to deliver a box. Essentially, a little present arrives from Arobynn, and he expects Aelin and the gang for dinner the next night. And Rowan asks, is this a trap? And Lysandra's like, yeah, probably. Kind of everything he does is a trap. And Aedion is like, is he going to poison us? And Aelin is like, that's not really his style. He's not really a poisoner guy. But, like, you know, we can never be sure. And Aelin is walking, Lysandra's out, but they like stop to chat in the warehouse without not being in earshot of the boys. And Lysandra is like, are you ready? And Aelin says, I'm not sure the debt could ever be paid for what he did, what they all did, but it will have to be enough. I'm running out of time. And Lysandra's like, okay, be careful tomorrow night. He will have a few tricks up his sleeve. And Aelin says, you too. And Lysandra's like, are you really mad that I didn't tell you about the fact that I was a shapeshifter? And Aelin says, your secret could have gotten you killed, just like mine. I just felt, I don't know, if anything, I wondered if I had done something wrong. Something to make you not trust me enough to tell me. And Lysandra is like, I've been wanting to. I've been dying to. Even before I knew who you were, Aelin, I knew what you were working towards. It was worth it. What is it? Her throat tightened. A world where people like me don't have to hide. Beautiful. She goes back upstairs to the boys, and the invitation is for dinner for the next night from Arobynn. So arrives with a little present. Arobynn also sent a bottle of perfumed skin oil with a note, a gift, and one I hope you'll wear tomorrow night. Ugh. And Aedion is like, why did he send you perfume? This is weird. Like, why did he want you to wear this? And Aelin is like, it's just another move in his game. The thought of spelling like something that he chose made her skin crawl, but she'd wear it because they needed to please him to get the amulet of Moranth. Like, she needed to be on his good side in order to get that amulet. Ugh. Rowan says the invitation is a threat. He knows both of us are here. And Aedion's like, oh, we're also supposed to bring the Valg general with us. Like, when are we going to get one of those? And Aelin's like, we are not going. You could have come, Aedion, but you ripped your stitches because you were being a little stinker. So now you have to stay home, and Rowan and I are going to go get one tonight. And then that night, Rowan and Aelin go down to the spot where Lorcan killed the Wordhound. Rowan is like, oh, this wasn't just a trap for Lorcan, this, like, sewer situation. And Aelin was like, nope, these things are spies for the kings. I wanted it to, like, see him. I wanted the last thing this Wordhound to see was Lorcan's face, because now these things are going to be after him. And she says, I needed Lorcan's eyes elsewhere tonight and tomorrow, and I need to know whether these Wordhounds could be killed. Why? He said he saw too much. Slowly she met his gaze. Because I'm going to use their beloved sewer entrance to get into the castle and blow up the clock tower from right underneath them. And Rowan let out a low, wicked chuckle. That's how you're going to free magic. Once Lorcan kills the last of the Wordhounds, you're going in. We love that she's using Lorcan. And so Rowan and Aelin capture this guard. It was almost too easy. Aelin is kind of sad because she honestly wanted to work a little bit harder. Like, come on, give her a challenge. And now they have him chained up in the basement of the warehouse. And they're kind of chatting with him, asking about the ring. And this guy is kind of like shifting back and forth between the man and the Valg. Like, they're having kind of a conversation with all three of them. All three of them. All two of... Well, there's like four of them. The Valg, the man, Rowan, Aelin. Okay. And Stevan is the man, and he comes through sometimes, and Aelin talks to him and learns that he's from Melisande. And Aelin says, if we take the ring off, would you be able to come back? Like, is the ring the only thing holding this Valg prince in you? And Stevan says, I wouldn't want to. The things we did. He liked to watch while I ripped them apart. And she's like, okay, tell me a little bit more about the Valg princes. And the Valg guy says, they are darkness, they are glory, they are eternal. And she's like, okay, anyway. Stevan, is there anyone here in Rifthold? And he says, yes. And he says, she asks, whose body is it inhabiting? And he says, the crown prince's. And she asks, is the crown prince in there in the same way you are? I never saw him, never spoke to him. If it's the prince inside him, I can't hold out. I can't stand this thing. If it's the prince will have broken him, used him, taken him. And then the guy is like begging for death. And Aelin is like, I will make sure you get death, but I need you to do me a favor first. Then we cut. It's nighttime. Aelin wakes up having a nightmare, but she wakes up and Rowan is safe next to her, and she sneaks out, but this time she is very careful not to wake Rowan. She like woke Rowan intentionally last time. This time she's going to make sure he does not wake up. And when she returns, she returns to a very grumpy Rowan very early in the morning. It's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and she smells like ash. Like, she smells like she was inside of a burning building, and he is like big mad. He is so angry with her that she left even after the convo they had without telling him. And Aelin is like, I had some things to do, it wasn't that high risk, which is probably a lie. And she falls asleep before he could lecture her. In the morning, he wakes up and he's still mad about it, but he realizes that Aelin is wearing his t-shirt to sleep in, which just like gives him big feelings. And so he's like, oh, I need to leave and like process these feelings I'm feeling in my stomach. Aelin finally gets up hours later, and she goes into the kitchen, and Rowan is scowling in the corner, but she requests to drink a cup of tea before he starts to yell at her. And then she makes a request of him. She says to him, will you come with me today? And Rowan's like, to Arobynn's? And Aelin's like, no, I mean, like, yes, I want you to come with me to Arobynn's, but there's something I need to do before that. There's a grave I need to visit. Because I don't know how I'm going to be able to get through this one. In her apartment in Rifthold, she doesn't have morning clothes, but she wears a dress of green and gold instead, because Sam would have wanted to see her in something that reminds him of life. She wasn't planning on bringing Rowan, but this morning she felt like she needed him with her, just like as a pillar of strength. And she gets there, and his gravestone says, Sam Cortland, beloved. Arobynn had left it blank, but Wesley had hired someone to carve it into the stone, as he explained in his letter. Beloved, not by her, but by many. Sam. Her Sam. For a moment she stared at the stretch of grass, at the white stone. For a moment she could see that beautiful face grinning at her, yelling her, loving her. She opened her fist of pebbles and picked out the 3 loveliest. 2 for the years since he had been taken from her, 1 for what they had been together. Carefully she placed them at the apex of the headstone's curve. Then she sat down against the stone, tucking her feet against her, and rested her head against the smooth, cool rock. Hello, Sam, she breathed into the river breeze. Ooh. I miss you, she said. Every day I miss you, and I wonder what you would have made of all this. Made of me. I think you would have been a wonderful king. I think they would have liked you more than me, actually. Her throat tightened. I never told you how I felt, but I loved you, and I think a part of me might have always loved you. Maybe you were my mate, and I never knew it. Maybe I'll spend the rest of my life wondering about that. Maybe I'll see you again in the afterworld, and then I'll know for sure. But until then I will miss you, and I will wish you were here. She would not apologize nor say it was her fault, because his death wasn't her fault, and tonight she would settle that debt. Ooh. She stands up to leave, and Rowan comes over, and he's standing next to her, and Aelin starts to explain whose grave they're at, and Rowan says, I know who he was to you. And then Rowan stretches out his hand and asks for Aelin for a pebble of his own, and he adds it to the stack on Sam's grave. And then he asks her, you're gonna kill Arobynn tonight, aren't you? And Aelin says, yes, after the dinner I'm going back to the keep. And Rowan says, and the amulet of Moranth, an endgame, but also a distraction. You're ready to do it? And she says, I have no choice but to be ready. I didn't do too bad on that, honestly. That scene kills me. I think it's so beautiful, and I think the element... Oh, I kept it short because I can't talk about this in too much depth. But that Rowan would also add a stone to Sam's grave. It's really beautiful, and this like, there's never any jealousy from Rowan over Sam. I mean, because he's lost someone of his own. But I don't know. This, like, it's a gesture of respect to add his own stone to Sam's grave. Gather myself. Time to go back to the witches. Elide's working in the kitchen now. She spent a few days kind of gaining everyone's trust, and then she poisoned some rolls. When she's making them, and she brings those specific rolls down to the laundry lady, the laundress. Not to kill her, just enough to make her sick for a few days. And the next day, Elide's in the laundry room helping, and she's washing out all the blue blood from the linens, and then volunteers to take the linens back downstairs. They, like, need a lot of extra help, so Elide is like, I know that they're gonna let me do more than usual because they need extra help. And the laundress kind of laughs and directs her to the basement. Like, clearly this is something that they do as, like, a punishment normally, to send people to the basement. But Elide has volunteered, so great. We love that. Elide's bowels had turned to water by the time she reached the guards. We love to mention a watery bowels reference. It does make me giggle, but I'm going to let you know, I'm reading Game of Thrones right now, and you know what? Game of Thrones makes those bowels go watery too. So, it's just a fantasy thing. Anyway, she is, like, literally pooping her pants by the time she gets to the guards, and she can hear moans of agony coming from the basement steps. It's also freezing cold, and so she goes down the steps. She goes down, and there's this long hallway, and the second door on the left is covered with claw marks that are pushing from inside the door, like someone has tried to claw their way out. And she knocks on the door and leaves the laundry, and then pretends to, like, trip and fall on the ground. She, like, is sprawled out on the ground because she wants to wait there to see if she can see into the room. And then the door opens. Cut to, Elide hasn't stopped throwing up since she got dropped off in Manon's room. Aelin found her in a random puddle of her own pee somewhere in the building and brought it up to Manon's room and was like, here you go. And the witches are like, okay, could you stop throwing up so you can tell us what you saw in there? And Elide's like, something opened that door to take the laundry, and I saw the chamber beyond. It was a man, but there was nothing human behind his eyes. Darkness leaked out of him. You said the witches were to be implanted how many times? It appears that they've given birth once and are almost ready to give birth again. And Aelin says, the witchling. Elide throws up. They are not witchlings. They are not babies. Elide's back, covering her face with her hands as if to rip out her own eyes. They are creatures. They are demons. Their skin is like black diamond, and they have these snouts with little teeth, fangs. Already they have fangs, and not like yours. She lowered her hands. They have teeth of black stone. There is nothing of you in them. Manon and the yellow legs chained the table and screaming, begging to be released. Manon turns to her second and her third. Aelin is furious, and she says, you let them do this. And Manon is like, there are my orders. Like, what was I supposed to do? Aelin is crying now. And Manon is like, has your heart softened? Have you no stomach for? And Aelin says, you let them do this. You gave them witches. Those are witches down there. And Sorrel's trying to, like, calm Aelin down. She's like, please calm down. Manon's going to kill you. And Manon goes for Aelin's throat. But she doesn't dig her nails in to, like, kill her. Because Aelin digs her claws into Manon's arm and draws blood. And and Manon's like, I'm demoting you again. Now you're my fourth or fifth. I don't care. You're not, like, lower. And I'm going to give you the rest of the punishment at breakfast. Like, Aelin, like, you cannot be doing this. And Aelin says, you aren't going to do anything. You aren't going to fight for them because your grandmother's not answering your letters. And then Manon goes says to Aelin, if you try to free them, if you try to do anything stupid, Aelin Blackbeak, the next punishment you'll receive will be your own execution. Aelin lets out another joyless laugh. You would not have disobeyed, even if it had been the Blackbeaks down there, would you? Loyalty, obedience, brutality, that is what you are. And then the girlies leave. And so it's just Manon and Elide in the room, and Elide is, like, tending to Manon's wound on her arm. She stopped puking, so we love that. And then Elide is being very brave. Elide says to Manon, is your broken kingdom worth it? And Manon says, I do not expect a human like you to understand what it is like to be an immortal with no homeland, to be cursed with eternal exile. And Elide says, my kingdom was conquered by the king of Ardalan. Everyone I loved was executed. My father's lands and my title were stolen from my uncle, and my best chance of safety now lies in sailing to the other end of the world. I understand what it is like to wish to hope. And Manon says, it is not hope, it is survival. And Elide says, it is hope for your homeland that guides you, that makes you obey. And Manon says, what of your future? For all your talk of hope, you seem resigned to fleeing. Why not return to your kingdom to fight? And Elide says, 10 years ago, my parents were murdered. My father was executed on a butchering block in front of thousands. But my mother died defending Aelin at Galathinius, the heir to the throne of Terrasen. She bought Aelin time to run. They followed Aelin's tracks to the frozen river, where they said she must have fallen in and drowned. But you see, Aelin had fire magic. She could have survived the cold. And Aelin never really liked me or played with me because I was so shy, but I never believed them when they said she was dead. Every day since then, I've told myself that she got away, and she's still out there, biding her time. Growing up, growing strong, so that one day she might come to save Terrasen. And you are my enemy, because if she returns, she will fight you. But for 10 years, until I came here, I endured burden because of her, because of the hope that if she got away, my mother's sacrifice wasn't in vain. I thought that one day, Aelin would come to save me, would remember I existed and rescue me from that tower. There it was, her great secret, which she had never dared to tell anyone, even her nursemaid. Even though she never came, even though I am here now, I can't let go of that. And I think that's why you obey, because you have been hoping every day of your miserable, hideous life that you'll get to go home. Manon was staring at her now. If this Aelin Galathinius were indeed alive, would you try to run to her, fight with her? I would fight with tooth and claw to get to her, but there are lines I wouldn't cross, because I don't think I could face her if I couldn't face myself for what I had done. Manon said nothing. The wing leader said from behind her, do you believe monsters are born or made? From what she'd seen today, she would say some creatures were very much born evil, but that's not what Manon was asking. I'm not the one who needs to answer that question, Elide said. I love Elide standing up to Manon. It was cute. What a beautiful moment. Okay, back in Terrasen. Just kidding. Back in Rifthold, Aelin is in the bathroom getting ready for tonight with Arobynn. And just like staring at the oil that is sitting on the bathroom counter. And she hates that she has to wear it. That she has to give Arobynn this little ounce of control over her body, like of the way she's presenting himself. Like it's this tendril of control, and she can feel it. This like small thing, but it feels very large. It feels really gross that she has to wear this, but she knows she needs to. Like if she shows up without it on, like it'll put him in a cranky mood, and she really does need him to be like pleased with her in order to get that amulet. And Rowan is like on the other side of the bathroom door, kind of like being like, hey girlie, are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. But he like knows that she's kind of like suffering with that. And then Rowan goes upstairs while Aelin is continuing to get ready. Aedion and Rowan are up on the roof, and Rowan tells Aedion that Aelin is going to kill Arobynn tonight. He's like, just so you know, Aelin is going to kill Arobynn. And, but if she decides for whatever reason she doesn't want to kill him, we're going to do it. And Aedion is like, okay, I get to kill him. Like, I get the killing blow because you got the blood oath. And Rowan is like, that does seem fair. They agree that, like, if they are going to kill him, they're going to kill him slow and painfully. Which, like, good. They get back inside, and Aelin has just finished getting ready. She comes out, and she's in the black velvet dragon gown from earlier. And Aelin says, you wanted to see me in this dress. And Rowan says, I hadn't realized the effect would be so. He shook his head. He took in her face, her hair, the combs. She's like gold combs in her hair. You look like Aelin stops him and says, a queen? And Rowan says, the fire-breathing bitch queen those bastards claim you are. And Aelin says, you don't look too bad yourself. Don't forget your cloak. I would feel rather guilty when all those poor mortal women combust at the sight of you. Rowan says, I'd say likewise, but I think I'd enjoy seeing the men bursting into flames as you started by. Okay, cute, flirty, we love. Okay, they arrive at the keep. And Aelin's like, everyone's on their best behavior, no shenanigans. Chaol and a few rebels are across the street in case anything goes wrong. They're like, we're watching the house. Aedion and Nesryn have the Valg prince in a little chest, and they're carrying him in. And Arobynn greets them at the door, and he tells Aelin that she looks great and smells great. And he says, I'm glad my gift was put to good use. He very menacingly greets Aedion and Rowan, just like generally being his vile self, and the boys are both like stoic and hostile. As Rowan moved deeper into the entryway, every step laced with power and death, coming to stop at her side. You can call me Rowan. That's all you need to know. He cocked his head to the side, a predator assessing his prey. Thank you for the oil, he added. My skin was a little dry. Rowan has stepped in and has decided that wearing this oil from her abuser was very upsetting to Aelin, but she knew she had to do it for the good of her kingdom. But Rowan says, I can soften this blow a little bit because I can take this burden away. Like, we can share this burden. I will wear the oil, and it will detract from the power because Aelin is still participating fully in what she needs to in order to keep him on her good side, or keep her on his good side. But I know that he's going to be annoyed that I'm wearing it. I'm pulling power away and giving it back to Aelin. Arobynn blinked, as much surprised as he'd show. It took her a moment to process what Rowan had said, to realize the almond smell hadn't just been coming for her. He'd worn it too. They immediately go in the house, and Arobynn is taking the Valg guy down to the basement. They're all going down to the basement. And Rowan knows it's a place that had only been used to, like, torture people, essentially, and Aelin had been trained down there. And he's like really working hard to refrain from killing Arobynn, and he thinks to himself, a girl. She'd been a girl when the red-haired bastard a few steps ahead had brought her here and taught her how to cut up men, how to keep them alive while she did it, how to make them scream and plead, how to end them. There was no part of her that disgusted him, no part of her that scared him, but the thought of her in this place, with these smells, in this darkness, with every step down the stairs, Aelin's shoulders seemed to droop, her hair seeming to grow duller, her skin paler. This is where she'd last seen Sam, he realized, and her master knew it. Again, Rowan is so strong for not just murdering Arobynn right here, right now. They get down to the basement, and Aelin is really, like, struggling in this room that has, like, haunted her dreams and her memories. Like, all she can see is, like, Sam's tortured body. And she thinks the table was empty, but she could almost see him there, broken and unrecognizable. The scent of Gloriella clinging to his body. Sam had been tortured in ways she hadn't known until she read Wesley's letter. The worst of it had been requested by Arobynn. Requested as punishment for Sam loving her. Punishment for tampering with Arobynn's belongings. Such a dark, cold room where they'd put Sam's body. Such a dark, cold room where she'd vomited and laid beside him on that table for hours, unwilling to leave him. Arobynn tells Aedion and Rowan to leave because he's like, the Valg Prince guy and Aelin and I don't need distractions from you. And Aedion is immediately like, no way. Like, absolutely not am I leaving her down here with you alone. But then Aelin gives Rowan a little nod and they leave. The boys leave. It's just Arobynn, the Valg guy, and Aelin in the basement. They've been interrogating and torturing Stevan for about half an hour. And they've learned that the rings are how these people are controlled. And essentially, they're linked via their blood. Like, the king, like, slices them and then, like, consumes a little bit of their blood. And then he's, like, able to have power over them once he wears the ring. But this general doesn't really know much about what the Valg are doing beyond, like, searching for the general, for Aedion. And so then Arobynn kills him and pockets the ring. They go upstairs for dinner. And Lysandra's up there. And Aelin goes in to, like, greet her, and she passes her a note as soon as they get upstairs, and then they sit down for dinner. This is the dinner arrangement. Arobynn's at the head of the table, obviously, with Aelin and Lysandra on one side of him, and Rowan and Aedion on the other side, so if, like, Aelin is, like, separated from the boys. And Arobynn's like, you guys are pretty quiet. Has my protege scared you into silence? And Aedion's like, you want us to make small talk after you butchered a demon? Like, didn't know that was the vibe, but okay. And Arobynn's like, want to know more about you. I want to know who my protege is living with. And Aelin is like, you didn't seem super concerned about who I was living with when you had me sent to Endover. So it's kind of weird that you care now. And Arobynn's like, is that what you think I did? Lysandra can tell you the truth. I fought tooth and nail to free you from that prison. I lost half my men to the effort. All of them tortured and killed by the king. I'm surprised your friend the captain didn't tell you. Such a pity he's on watch on the rooftop tonight. We could have had him over. And Lysandra's like, it's true, he did try for months. We love a liar. Lysandra is Oscar award-winning actress. Oscars. Emmys. She's got an EGOT. I love Lysandra. If you haven't caught on to that. I love all the girls in this book. And then Arobynn, there's like a hole in the wall behind them. And Arobynn tells a story of the time that Aelin threw a dagger at Lysandra's head and how he left the hole there as like a little thing to remember Aelin by. He's like, look at that little hole in the wall. Aelin put it there, and I love it. And Rowan and Aelin have an eyeball conversation. So this whole conversation is happening with their eyeballs. They're so busy with their eyeball conversation that they miss that Arobynn has asked Aelin a question. And Aelin's like, oops, sorry, what did you ask, Arobynn? And Arobynn says, I asked if you've had fun these past few weeks wrecking my investment properties and ensuring all my clients won't touch me. Okay, they didn't move seats suddenly. I just wanted to give us a little different perspective on there's the hole in the wall. I just wanted to give us a different perspective on the table layout. So now we're looking at them head on. Last Supper style. Okay? Nothing has actually changed. We wanted to mix things up. Anyway, Aelin says, I don't know what you're talking about. Arobynn's like, remember the time you wrecked the vaults? That wasn't just revenge for Sam. And Aelin's like, how do you get away from the king's men? The king's men that she, like, led down to the vaults. He's like, yeah, but also was the lockbox that is down in the vault being hacked open in an accident? And Aelin's like, you know how those guys get when there's like a fight. They'd be crazy. I'm not the boss of them. And Arobynn's like, also you deliberately disguised yourself as Hinsdall Cormac, one of my most loyal clients and investors when you freed your cousin. I could dismiss that as a coincidence, except a witness says he called out Cormac's name at the prince's party and Cormac waved to him. Okay. The witness told the king that too, that he saw Cormac heading towards Aedion right before the explosions happened. And And that, what a coincidence, that very day Aedion disappeared, 2 carriages belonging to a business that Cormac and I owned together went missing. Carriages that Cormac then told all my clients and partners that I used to get Aedion to safety when I freed the general that day by impersonating him, because I apparently have become a God's damned rebel sympathizer strutting about at town all hours of the day. So remember when Lysandra was like, I have some ways we can maybe make this plot a little bit better. This is how they made it better. They were like, we could use this plot to like ruin Arobynn a little bit, which is always a great thing. Rowan and Aelin have another eyeball combo. Rowan goes, you clever, wicked fox. And Aelin says, here you were thinking the red hair was all just for vanity. And Rowan says, I will never doubt again. And Arobynn says, what will it take, dearest, for you to stop being such a raging pain in my ass? There they were, the words she wanted to hear. The reason she'd been so careful not to wreck him altogether, but just to merely annoy him enough. And Aelin says, a few things, I think. And so they decide to retire to a sitting room. So it's just going to be Aelin and Arobynn in this room. The boys are supposed to wait with Lysandra in like a different sitting room, but obviously they're waiting just like outside the door, obviously. And Arobynn says to her, so all of this was a punishment for a crime I didn't commit? And Aelin says, first thing, Arobynn, let's not bother with the lies. Like, we all know that you were definitely directly connected to all the stuff that happened with Sam and I. And Arobynn says, casting yourself as the victim, are you? You're forgetting that it didn't take much encouragement to put those knives in your hands. And Aelin says, I am what I am, but it doesn't erase the fact that you knew very well who I was when you found me. And Arobynn tries to tell her that he raised her in the Assassin's Keep as like some attempt to like keep her safe and help her train so like one day she could take back her kingdom. He's like, I did it all for you, so you could like train and then take back your kingdom one day. And he says to her, who would you have become without me? Some pampered princess? Some pampered, quaking princess? Your beloved cousin would have locked you up in a tower and thrown away the key. I gave you your freedom. I gave you the ability to bring down men like Aedion Ashriver with a few blows. And all I get for it is contempt. And then Aelin brings up Sam, who Arobynn is like staunchly denies anything having to do with that. He's like, that wasn't me. And Arabynn's like, also, I want to help you take down this king. Like, I want to give you all the resources that are at my disposal for you to use, like with your talent and all of my money. Like, it's going to be a breeze for us to take down the king. And Aelin says, if you expect me to trust you, then give me back my family amulet. We'll kill the king my way. No captain, no court. But I get to use your resources however I need. And Arabynn's like, okay, well, what's in it for me? So I'm going to give you your necklace back, and then you're going to become queen. Seems like there's nothing in it for me. And then Aelin says, well, I won't sell you out to the king. Valg blood is impossible to get out, and I'm sure he'll be interested to see the stains that are now in your basement. And Arabynn's like, okay, I can also threaten you in the same way. I'll let the king know where the missing captain of the guard is, and also where his missing general is. And just lead him right to a very suspicious warehouse apartment. And Aelin says, okay, it'll be a race to the palace then. Luckily, I already have my messenger at the castle gates waiting for my signal. So, and Arobynn says, too bad if I kill you, you won't get to leave and give the signal. And Aelin's like, so the thing is, the signal is us not returning. So, actually, regardless, the message is going to go out. And Arobynn says, how cruel and ruthless you've become, my love. But will you become a tyrant as well? Perhaps you should start slipping rings onto the fingers of your followers. And he pulls out the amulet and passes it to Aelin. Clearly, he knew that she was going to ask for it tonight. And so he passes it over to her, and she immediately knows it's the word key. Her fingers grazed the gold chain, and she wished she had never heard of it, never touched it. There had never been in the same room as it. Not right, her blood sang, her bones groaned. Not right, not right, not right. The amulet was heavier than it looked, and warm from his body or from the boundless power that it kept dwelling inside of it. The word key. Holy gods. And then Aelin's like, okay, you definitely agreed to this, like, way too easily. I, like, definitely know you have the upper hand, but, like, I'm enjoying this game, so let's, like, keep playing. And she's like, also, if you betray me, Arobynn, I will make what was done to Sam look like child's play. Like, it'll look like mercy compared to what I will have done to you. And Arobynn says, learned some tricks these past few years, have you? Like, taunting her about that. They're like, we're leaving, okay? And then he, like, pulls her close, and he's like, one more thing. He says, getting very, very close to her, he says, I'm gonna enjoy having you back, he purred. And then faster than she could react, he slid the word-stone ring onto her finger. The hidden dagger Aelin had drawn clattered to the wooden floor. The moment the cool black stone slid against her skin, she blinked at the ring, at the line of blood that had appeared on her hand beneath Arabynn's sharp thumbnail as he raised her hand to his mouth and brushed his tongue along the back of her palm. Her blood was on his lips as he straightened. Such a silence in her head, even now. Her face stopped working. Her heart stopped working. Blink, he ordered her. She did. Smile, she did. Tell me why you came back. To kill the king. To kill the prince. Arobynn leaned in closer, his nose grazing her neck. Tell me that you love me. I love you. Ew. Say my name when you tell me you love me. I love you, Arobynn Hamel. His breath warmed her skin as he huffed a laugh into her neck, then brushed a kiss where it met her shoulder. I think I'm gonna like this. He pulled back, admiring her blank face. Her features now empty and foreign. Take my carriage. Go home and sleep. Do not tell anyone of this. Do not show your friends the ring. And tomorrow, report here after breakfast. We have plans, you and I, for our kingdom in Aelin. She just stared, waiting. Do you understand? Yes. He lifted up her hand again and kissed the wordstone ring. Good night, Aelin, he murmured, his hand grazing her backside as he shooed her out. The carriage ride home, Aedion and Rowan were like boiling with rage. They obviously were eavesdropping at the door, and so they know what happens, but there are too many eyes on them as they go home for them to do anything. Well, Aelin just like sits in the carriage like a doll, like in the corner. Like she's just like an unmoving little doll. And they get to the apartment, and Aelin is actually totes fine. Whew, that was a really scary couple pages. It was a scary page. Were you scared? I was scared. It was a prank. She pranked him. She's going to put it on her prank YouTube channel. It's going to be a funny one where he thinks that he takes over her body with mind control. But actually it's fine. But like clearly he's plotting. Oh my gosh. Just like the plotting. Those pages. Where he touches her butt. Rude. Also, he's like, our kingdom. Like he's going to help her take back Terrasen. But then he's going to serve as the king and just like use her as like a puppet. He's like the most vile human being that has ever existed. I know he's not a real human being, that SarahJMaas wrote him, but like, vile. She was able to get a Valg, like, so Stevan, if we remember, this Valg like had very little control over the human within him, so they were able to like remove the ring, and that pulled the Valg out, and so it was just left with Stevan. And Stevan did want to die, because he was like having a miserable time. And so Aelin was able to like feed him a bunch of lies that he fed to Arobynn. This is like really a bummer for Stevan. Like what a hero in this story, because he was like brutally tortured for a while there. And essentially that whole information about like the blood and thing, that's fake. That's fake news. We knew better too. But I was still scared. Also, she swapped the rings. That was just like a rando ring from like her jewelry box. Anyway, Aedion's like super very cool, but also why didn't you just kill it? Arobynn. Like, why do we go through all of this rigmarole? Why didn't you get the amulet of Moranth and just like chop his head off? And Aelin said the final test, giving him the wordstone ring and having him have access to that power, was a final test. She was hoping that he wasn't the monster she suspected he was. She was giving him one last opportunity to prove himself like worthy of staying alive. And some pathetic part of her wished. And so now they know for sure that he's a monster. And she thinks to herself, small pathetic part of her wished that she didn't. Aelin and Rowan retire to the bedroom, and Rowan is like, man, that necklace has some strong vibes. I can like tell that it's a real word key. I was gonna ask you how we would know, but like we know. And Aelin is like, yeah, it kind of makes sense that they would hide it in this necklace. Like either the royals like super strong magic would hide it, or just like the swagger of being a royal would like really camouflage it. And there are word marks carved into the back, and Rowan's like, yeah, I recognize them from your brow when you glowed when we were over at Maeve's. It is like Brandon's nameless mark. She's like, interesting. And Aelin decides to hide it under a floorboard because she can't just wear it around town. But as she's dropping it into the floor compartment, she like feels what it is like to be Rowan for a second. Like she like is in Rowan's body and mind for a second. Super weird. And they kind of are talking more about it, and they kind of decide that this power is like neutral. It's not like good magic or evil magic. It's just like controlled by its wearer, which is why Terrasen was like a thriving kingdom when it belonged to Terrasen's royalty, and why like in Aelin the word keys are being used for evil. But she does have a replica from Lysandra's jeweler in case she needs to trick anyone. So she puts on that replica word key necklace. Later that night, Rowan meets Aelin up on the roof. She's on watch up there, and Rowan is like, hey, I can take care of Arobynn tonight if you want. And Aelin says, I told Lysandra she could do it. Honestly, she seemed more entitled to it. It feels wrong, she said, to still wish there had been some other way. She took an uneven breath, the air clouding in front of her. He was a bad man, she whispered. He was going to enslave me to his will, use me to take over Terrasen, maybe make himself king, maybe sire my... She shuddered so violently the light shimmered off the gold in her dress. But I also owe him my life. All this time I thought it would be a relief, a joy to end him, but all I feel now is hollow and tired. And then like Rowan gives her a hug, and he's just like holding her, and Aelin says, tomorrow I need you to check on Lorcan to see if he killed the word hounds, and then you can kill him if you want, like up to you. And Rowan stood with her, with his queen in the rain, breathing in her scent and letting her steal his warmth for as long as she needed. So they're just hugging in the rain. It's very sweet. And Aelin is stroking Rowan's cheek. Romance vibes. She wants him, he wants her. Romance vibes. She whispers his name very romantically, and Rowan is like, ah! And he chucks his hands off of her and is like, don't touch me like that. And Aelin is like, okay. She like backs up, and you know, in one sense I am like, go off, Rowan, set those boundaries, but also like it did make Aelin heck of embarrassed, and also like Rowan just kind of like got freaked out for a second. Back with Lysandra. Lysandra is in bed with Arobynn. He is asleep on the pillow next to her. Aelin had passed her a note that had said, "He's all yours." And Lysandra thinks to herself, this was a gift she knew. A gift from the queen who had nothing else to give, a no-name whore with a sad story. He had never had trouble sleeping. The night he'd killed Wesley, he'd slept like the dead, unaware that the moments when even her iron will couldn't keep the silent tears from falling. She would find that love again one day, and it would be deep and unrelenting and unexpected. The beginning and the end and the eternity. The kind that could change history, change the world. The hilt of the stiletto was cool in her hand as Lysandra rolled back over. No more than a restless sleeper, she pulled it with her. Lightning flashed on the blade, a flicker of quicksilver, for Wesley, for Sam, for Aelin. And for herself. For the child she'd been, for the 17-year-old on her bidding night, for the woman she'd become, her heart in shreds, her invisible wound still bleeding. It was so very easy to sit up and slice the knife across Arobynn's throat. This is just a slide to celebrate Lysandra, because I love her. She is my queen. I'm glad she finally killed Arobynn. When I first read this book, I didn't love that Aelin wasn't the one to kill Arobynn, but on a reread, this was the move. I love that the girlies came together and like shared in his death in a way. What a queen. Little Dorian check-in. Update, he's having a bad time currently. Currently the Valg prince using his body is torturing a guy. Fun. Okay, back with the girlies. So Arobynn is dead. Word is sent to Aelin that she is wanted at the keep. She's a little bit rattled, like as they arrive there. She's like glad that Lysandra was able to go through with it, that she like is safe and isn't dead, but also like murdering her mentor and murdering this man who like saved her and raised her is giving her a little bit of a pit in her stomach. So her and the boys take the carriage to the keep, and Aelin closed her eyes, breathing in deep. One last time you have to wear this mask, one last time, and then you can bury Celaena Sardothien forever. She opened her eyes, her shoulders squaring and her chin lifting, even as the rest of her went fluid with feline grace. Aedion gaped, and she knew there was nothing of the cousin he'd come to know in her face. She glanced at him, then Rowan, a cruel smile spreading over as she leaned over to open the carriage door. "Don't get in my way," she told them. She swept from the carriage, her cloak flapping in the spring wind as she stormed up the steps of the keep and kicked in the front doors. So she's really like leaning into that like assassin swagger. She is being and embodying Celaena Sardothien for a few more pages. And Aelin is like, "Hello, what is happening? How is Arobynn dead?" And Turn was like, "I was literally about to ask you the same question. We were like very suspicious of you." And Lysandra is like in the corner with Clarisse. She is completely covered in blood, but she's swearing she wasn't the one to murder Arobynn. And Clarisse is like, it clearly wasn't her. Why would Lysandra kill him? He is like her best client. The like best way that she's making money, so it does not make sense economically, she's a capitalist, that she would kill him. Aelin is like, literally didn't ask Clarisse, so please stop talking. Aelin demands to see the crime scene, and Turn and the boys are like, "Why do you think you're in charge? We like called you as a courtesy." And the body's already been moved, but the bed is completely soaked in blood. And there are men's boot prints in the blood. Thanks, Chaol. Apparently Chaol like helped after Lysandra killed Arobynn. Chaol came in through the window and like helped Lysandra make sure everything was nicely covered up. Back in the main hall, Aelin dismisses Clarisse and Lysandra, being like, these girlies couldn't have and wouldn't have done it. Like, clearly it wasn't them. And Clarisse is like, but I want to stay and hear the will read. And Aelin's like, his body's not even cold yet. It seems kind of uncouth to worry about the will, but the lawyer just arrived, so I guess you can stay. And it's lawyer time. Aelin, they're like all gathered in this room, and the lawyer's about to like read out the will, and Rowan goes to touch Aelin, and she flinches away. She's like, don't touch me, because she's still like a little bit upset from the situation that happened the night before. So the lawyer starts reading out the list of Arobynn's assets, and everyone is at the edge of their seat waiting to hear who is getting everything. And the bank guy reads out the will, and it says, "It is my will," the master read, "that the sole beneficiary of all my fortune, assets, and holdings should be my heir, Celaena Sardothien. There's a small part that's set aside to repay the debts to Clarisse." And Aedion is like, "That is bullshit." And Aelin is like, "What? Like, say that again?" And the bank lawyer guy is like, "Yeah, his will was updated 3 months ago while Aelin was still in Wendelin. And we have, like, all the copies match this. Like, it's clearly meant to go with her." And Clarissa is appalled because she assumed that she was getting a very large sum of money from Arobynn when he died. And then Aelin is like, "Actually, this is my house. Get out." She says that to Lysandra and Clarice. They peace out. And then she turns to the assassins that are still remaining, like Turn and a bunch of other guys. And she starts to confront them about their role in Sam's deaths, and then is like, get your stuff and then get out of my house. I own this house and everything in it. Taryn, Harding, and Mullen haven't yet paid back their debts to poor Arobynn, so I own everything they have, even their clothes. I'm feeling generous, so I'll let them keep those since their taste is shit awful anyway. But their weapons, their client lists, the guild, all of that is mine. I get to decide who's in and who's out, and since these three saw fit to accuse me of murdering my master, I say they're out. If they try to work again in this city or on this continent, then by law and by the laws of the guild, I have the right to hunt them down and chop them into itty-bitty pieces. She bats her eyelashes. Or am I wrong? The master's gulp was audible. You are correct. Turn took a step towards her. You can't do this. I can and I will. The Queen of Assassins sounds nice, doesn't it? She waved to the door. See yourselves out. You can't just toss us out. What will we do? Where will we go? And Aelin says, I hear hell is particularly nice this time of year. And then the boys are like, what are we going to do? And Aelin's like, actually, I will sell you the house and the guild if you want it. So, like, if you can get this very large sum of money together in the next few hours, I will sell you all this. And they're like, okay, we're going to figure it out. We're going to buy the house and the guild from you. We're on my phone now. Sorry, my, like, camera card filled up, but I'm on the actual last slide of this part, so bear with me. Okay, so they go. The house is empty. The assassins have left. The Clarice has left. Lysandra has left. It's just Aelin and the boys. And so they decide to go down to the basement to see Arobynn's body. Rowan's thinking. Rowan didn't know what to make of it. A whirlwind of hate and rage and violence. That's what she had become. And none of these piss-poor assassins had been surprised. Not even blinked at her behavior. From Aedion's pale face, he knew the general was thinking the same thing, contemplating the years she'd spent as that unyielding, vicious creature. Celaena Sardothien. That's who she'd been then, and who she'd become today. He hated it. Hated that he couldn't reach her when she was that person. Hated that he'd snapped at her last night and panicked at the touch of her hands. Now she'd shut him out entirely. This person she became today had no kindness, no joy. Oh, sad. And so they get to the basement, and Aedion's like, oh my god, Aelin, you switched the will. And Aelin is like, yeah, you said you needed money for an army, Aedion, so here's your money. All of it. Every coin for Terrasen. It was the least that Arobynn owed us. That night we fought in the pits, I was only there because I'd contacted the owners the day before and told them to send out subtle feelers about where Arobynn was investing. He took the bait, didn't even question the timing of it, but I wanted to make sure he quickly earned back all his money he lost when he trashed the vaults, so he wouldn't be denied one coin owed to us. She had made sure that the money was as much as possible. Aedion says, how did you manage that? And then Rowan's like, that's what she's been doing at night. She, like, sneaks out and she's, like, burning copies of the will and, like, switching it with a new one and going out and, like, making sure all this is working. And Aelin says, in the original will, Clarice would have been very rich. Turn would have been king of the assassin. All I would have gotten, it was the amulet of Moranth. That's the only thing I would have gotten in the will. And Aedion's like, oh my god, you should have told me. And Aelin's like, I needed your surprise to be genuine. You're not as good of an actress as Lysandra. Lysandra is an EGOT award-winning actress, and you are just Aedion. And they uncover Arobynn's body, and she looks at the mangled slash in his neck, and Aelin says to his dead body, I hope a dark god finds a special place in his realm for you. And she turns to Aedion, asks for the sword, and she chops off Arobynn's head, just to be safe. Just to be safe, because this man is evil incarnate, so he might be Valg too. That is the end of part 1 of Queen of Shadows, which is my second video. Like I said, this is going to be a 4-video book because obviously, as you can tell, I just recorded for over 2 hours in that part. So, I don't know. This is going to be like 17 hours of content. Sorry. Would it be faster just to read the whole book? Maybe. That's not my business. I will get the next part to you as soon as possible. And until then, subscribe so you know when that part is up. And I will see you next time. Bye.